Okay, the YouTube stream has started as well. The recording has started, so Kyle can feel free to start whenever he wants to.
All right. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody to the August 27, 2020 meeting of the CB6 Business Affairs and Street Activities Committee meeting. My name is Kyle Athaide and I am the chair of the committee. This meeting is being called to order at 6:32 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman and Community Associate Brendan Berth. To the members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the question and answer feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. For tonight, we need a volunteer from the committee to draft the minutes of tonight's meeting. If you can take minutes, please raise your hand. Don't all jump at once. Dan Devine, are you able to take minutes tonight, please?
Sure, I'll do that.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
Thanks.
So tonight's minutes will be taken by Dan Devine.
Thank you,
I
Dan.
will now take attendance by roll call.
Okay.
Cody, can you please conduct the roll call?
Sure. Kyle Athaide,
Present.
Matt Bondi. Matt. Dan Devine,
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio,
Here.
Paige Judge. Paige. Yusuf Khalid. No Yusuf. John Keller.
Here.
John. Kathleen Kelly.
Here.
Kathleen. Anton Malner.
Here.
Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
All right. Frank Scala. Frank. Seema Shah.
Here.
And Susan Steinberg.
Here.
We've got 9 members, which does give you a quorum.
All right, thank you, Cody. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing none, there is no objections. The agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the July 30th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt these minutes. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objection, the minutes from the July 30th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. So before we get into the meeting, I'd like to go over some ground rules. Number 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. This is relatively easy through Zoom. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. It's the hand icon. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel will appear before you, and you will find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, let us know through the chat icon. Furthermore, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having, or to state in writing information, for example, an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Next, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And lastly, we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So with that in mind, please keep questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So before we get into the agenda, I just want to make sure that everyone is safe and sound at home. On the forecast, we do have a tropical storm or hurricane, so I just want to make sure that everyone is safe and sound. If you do need to drop off, please feel free to do so. As mentioned, the minutes for this meeting will be up next month as well. So first up, I want to welcome Assemblymember Robert Carroll, who will be talking to us about an Assembly bill, which is also reflected in a Senate bill regarding business interruption insurance. I want to thank the Assemblymember and his staff for joining us today and for giving us time to discuss a very important issue. So can we turn it over to the Assemblymember now?
Good evening, Community Board 7. Thank you so much, Kyle and everyone else, for having me to discuss this most important issue. In a nutshell, I carry and drafted two pieces of legislation that deal with business interruption claims. The first being a retroactive bill that would allow for any business that had purchased business interruption insurance to make a retroactive claim back to March 6th for any damages that they have that they believe should be covered by their business interruption policy that was rejected because of an exclusionary clause in that contract that excluded viruses, microbes, and bacteria. That bill has 45 co-sponsors in the Assembly and about 25 in the Senate. And then I have another bill that is a prospective bill that would make it null and void from this day forward, whenever we would pass the bill, to have exclusory clauses related to viruses and would make them null and void due to public policy. Both bills would do that. The second bill just would not deal with any retroactivity. These bills are necessary. They are both, I believe, would stand up to legal scrutiny. I think you are a dime store lawyer if you believe that the state legislature or state legislatures around this country have not retroactively changed contracts. The New York State Legislature did it last year when we changed a whole host of lease agreements, things like preferential rent, that changed the essence of a contract. Of course, almost every single labor law that states and the federal government have ever passed. And of course, there are folks in our state who still have discriminatory covenants for their homes or co-ops or condo units. And of course, we don't enforce those, and we passed legislation that would not allow to enforce them. So I don't want to get into the raptures of the deep about why I believe this legislation would stand up to legal scrutiny. But what I do know is that it is absolutely necessary to save our small businesses in New York. The insurance industry is sitting on $1 trillion of reserves. They got those reserves because small businesses have been paying premiums for years and years and years. We need to get these small businesses their working capital. I was talking to a theater company in Manhattan yesterday. They were one of the few small businesses that had a policy that actually covered COVID-19. And their insurance company just rejected all of their claims because they got a PPP loan. These folks are mendacious. They will use anything not to pay out a claim. I hope that folks like yourselves can call your assembly member, your state senator. I see your state senator is on the Zoom now. I believe he's a co-sponsor of the bill, and if he's not, he should be. We need to get this moving in the state Senate and Assembly. We need the governor to sign it. We need to get, there's a resolution in the city council. We need the city council to pass that. We need to keep the pressure up so that we can save our critical small businesses everywhere from a local dry cleaner to your favorite bar or restaurant to theater spaces and music venues to nonprofit housing would all benefit from this legislation.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. I want to open it now for questions. I know when we first were discussing this issue over a month ago, there were a lot of questions that we had. So I just want to open it up to the committee to see what specific questions we have about this proposed legislation. Well, actually, as we wait for hands to go up, one of the things, if you could clarify for us, and I know for some people of the public as well, what is the big challenges that you're seeing as being, pushed back against this bill, or is it something that's kind of universally accepted as being necessary and productive, or are you facing some sort of, tensions or challenges to getting this done?
Great question, Kyle. What we're seeing pushback from the insurance industry and from the status quo. What we need folks to realize that in regular times, the sanctity of contract is something that we all respect. And I'm an attorney by trade. But it is the job of the legislature when contracts are so unequal to step in and to rebalance the scales. And the insurance industry knows this because they're highly regulated. The contracts that we're talking about are actually reviewed by the Department of Financial Services, and the businesses that we're talking about have 250 employees or less. So these are contracts that are akin to your cell phone contract, your mortgage. You have no ability to change the terms of these contracts. They're adhesion contracts in essence. And what we're deciding here is to say the insurance companies have pulled a fast one. When they got this clause slipped in after the SARS outbreak, that it's one sentence in a contract that's usually 300 pages long that says this policy excludes viruses, microbes, and bacteria. I don't believe the folks at the Department of Financial Services who reviewed this contract believed that there would be a worldwide pandemic that would shut down the global economy. I believe they read that and thought, well, if your small business gets the flu, you can't put in a claim for the flu. Not if you were shut down by the city and the state of New York and the global economy comes to a screeching halt because of a highly contagious virus, you don't have a claim. In the courts of the state of New York, when there's a dispute about an insurance contract, they look to see what a reasonable person who purchased that insurance would believe what was covered. And I can tell you, I've talked to a whole host of businesses, all of them believed an episode like this would be covered. And I believe that they are reasonable and prudent in that assumption.
Thank you so much for the clarification. So any other committee members, do you have any questions about this? Senator Hoylman, do you have anything to add to that? I know you are a co-sponsor of the Senate.
Sure, I am. It's
bill.
good to see. It's good to see Bobby from Brooklyn here. One of my most tenacious colleagues on the issue of small businesses and really reform. Generally speaking, he's been a leader. We carry a number of bills, including together, including to allow 16-year-olds the opportunity to vote in municipal elections and state elections, which again speaks to Bobby's kind of vision. The thing I worry about, there's a quote that an incompetent lawyer can delay a trial for months or years. A competent lawyer can delay one for even longer. And so, while all this legislation that we're considering is key, I don't know, to be very candid, how much of it sadly applies to our current small businesses that are in the midst of this economic crisis. And I think we have to be very candid with them that even if Albany passed this bill, and God hope we do, or the one that I carry, we don't know. We don't know what the impact's going to be on small businesses who are currently on the ropes or those who have shuttered or thinking of shuttering because of the challenges that are going to draw this out for many years. So, I think Bobby agrees to the extent that we can continue to campaign through our federal representatives for aid for Washington, or, consider revenue raisers on our own dime here in the state of New York to help small businesses, as well as, everyone else who is hurting, including the most vulnerable. We're going to have to do that. That's just really what it boils down to. There is not a lot of room for us to be complacent about any of these options. So that's what I would say about Bobby's bill. I am a proud co-sponsor, and I think it's outrageous that insurance adjusters are trying to, squirm their way out of responsibility. I will say that there are, and I might have missed the earlier part of the Assembly member's presentation, there are a number of lawyers across the city who are taking the claims of small business owners who have been rejected by their insurance companies on this very issue, and looking at class action litigation in connection with it, as well as certain clauses that may be in their insurance contracts that may give them a little more flexibility to actually have a legitimate claim for coverage. So, we need to encourage, our small businesses not just to, lay down their arms, but to actually pursue it vigorously to the extent they're able to through their own legal representation.
Thank you.
I agree with Brad's proactive recommendation that no one and no small business should rest on their laurels and not actively participate in doing what is best for them and what is most advantageous, be that legally or any other avenue. I do think it is important, though. I do want to highlight this, is that I don't think we should continually wait for the federal government. I think the state needs to be bold. I think the senator referenced revenue raisers. We should be doing that the day after Labor Day. We need to act now because, God willing, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be inaugurated on January 21st. But January 21st is still a long way away. And then they've got to take control of a completely devastated federal government. We need relief right now for small businesses. I don't think business interruption, my two bills, are a magic bullet, but I do think they could be part of an arsenal that would hopefully bring relief to some, if not many, small businesses in our city.
And I think another, if I could just interrupt, Bobby, I think another important thing about your bill is that it does change the playing field and presumably the litigation strategy for a lot of these insurance companies, and forces insurance companies into negotiation. Right now, they're just walking away scot-free. So I think that's an important, cascading effect that your legislation would have.
That's a great point.
Thank you. And I want to open it up to, we have two applicants here tonight who are applying for licenses. And I see that in the chat, someone was talking about their own experience of applying for a claim, even though they did have pandemic insurance, but were declined. Could you speak more to that? Cody, could we unmute them?
Hi,
They can unmute themselves.
I'm Leanna from Coyote Ugly. So we have pandemic insurance for 9 of our bars, have been declined. We, in fact, have hired litigators because, we've been paying for 10, 15 years on this insurance, and it's just getting pushed to the back. And all we've been told is to hold on, to just wait.
So I don't know why you were denied. I do know that I talked to a theater company in Chelsea just yesterday, and I know their development director very well. And she told me that they were rejected basically because they got a PPP loan and they had done some fundraising, some emergency fundraising off of COVID, none of which made up the massive loss in general fundraising and ticket sales and everything else that this theater company does. And so I don't know why you were specifically.
Yeah, and we were told to come back and try again because our insurance was the top level for that specific type. In fact, most people don't even ever get pandemic insurance.
Yeah.
So they told us to try again, but they didn't link it to our PPP loans. But our PPP loan was $70,000. That wouldn't have covered a month. You know, now we're sitting closed for 6 months.
What I think this proves is just how mendacious these insurance companies are. And it's one reason why I have two pieces of legislation. One is the retroactive bill, and one is just a prospective bill that would, you know, say that they can no longer have this blanket virus exemption. But it's because just like this, right? People dealt with similar things with Sandy and other things that suddenly you put in a claim, a legitimate claim that you think will be paid out. The insurance company, it behooves them to keep falling on the ball and to keep denying claims and to kind of put up roadblocks in hopes that you will either stop or that through attrition, you will give up or something will happen. And I think it's why it's so important. It sounds like you have an attorney and that you're going to fight back. That I think is really, really necessary.
With this situation, what it's made me realize is just, I feel awful for the mom and pops who don't have the ability to, you know, financially or even just, you know, the knowledge to go out and kind of seek justice for themselves, because this is uncharted waters and you feel like you're a number that's at the bottom of a list and you're calling and calling and calling with no people giving you any advice. This is very hard to navigate what's going on.
And if you want, we could talk offline. We talk to some people at the Department of Financial Services all the time. And we could highlight that this is happening to you, because I'm sure it's happening to, and I just talked to a theater company it's happening to. I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small businesses in New York that this is happening to.
Absolutely. I have no doubt. And I'll tell you this, most of my peers in this industry actually didn't get this particular type of insurance. We did. And it's just heartbreaking to know that this is when, you know, we've been paying for years. This is when we need it. And it's not there.
Big surprise, right?
Yeah, exactly. And having gone through Katrina, honestly, you know, down there, this is kind of the same thing. So I was expecting it, but it takes years and years to finally get some of these funds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your experience with us. Jeannie, I saw that you had a hand up earlier. Was your question answered, or do you still have a question?
I'm going to have to go. This is Brad. But so to the extent, I'm so sorry that I obviously have a time crunch here. But I will say this, if I could, you should look for, a civil authority clause in your insurance. I'm sure your attorneys already have, but that's another hook through which some of these class actions are proceeding based on the fact that a government has ordered shutdowns. There is some room to claim business interruption on that hook. Something I would recommend, and I think shopping for the right attorney, is key. It sounds like you've got a good one, but the fact that you actually had that specific kind of clause should set you apart from so many people who, were just subject to physical damage, period. And that an insurance company is trying to again, squeeze their way out of it is outrageous. And as Bobby mentioned, as Assemblymember Carroll mentioned, you know, New York is home to the insurance companies kind of headquarters across the world. And the state of New York, unlike the federal government, has specific regulatory authority over insurance companies. So I think Assemblymember Carroll would agree. We should have a lot of bargaining power as it pertains to insurance companies because of those facts.
All right, thank you so much, Senator. And of course, we're also discussing your bill later in the meeting as well, to save our streets. Save our storefronts, sorry. So Jeannie, did you want to finish up what you're saying? Yeah. Jeannie, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One is I was actually going to bring up the whole thing about the class action, but based on what I just heard from Lily, is that your name? I'm sorry.
Anna.
Hi, nice to meet you. That it seems that there's no collective, we don't really know the numbers, right? So how many folks fall into these categories? One, who groups of small businesses or businesses that have the insurance, the pandemic clause in it, others that don't. So I'm just thinking, my thought is we need to know the numbers of people who are really, businesses are really in big trouble because of this clause, right? And I think that'll help legislation to know how many businesses and how many dollars are affected by all this. So, and my other question is whether
not many people actually get this.
Yeah.
I think because I have businesses in other parts of the country that have more, hurricanes, we're dealing with that right now, things like that we added stuff like that. So I have a feeling regular mom and pops probably don't get this insurance and they're screwed. But then people like me that's had it for years,
so
not getting any payout.
So I would be curious, like, how do we find out which businesses, not just that clause, that even if they have it or not, but which businesses are affected? How many dollars, how many just in Community Board 6 are affected that they just can't get their insurance because of this hidden clause? And whether or not businesses know that there's some legislation going, into Albany about this. And whether my only other question is whether or not the media knows about this. Like, is this being reported on a wider scale?
So the media definitely knows. There have been articles about this bill specifically in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Cranes, CNBC, to name a few. There are two versions of the bill. The first version, the retroactive version, has about 45 assembly sponsors and about 25 Senate sponsors. So it's pretty well known by the membership. The example that Hannah, I believe is your name, Hannah mentioned, is highly rare. I know a handful of other businesses that did not have the virus exclusion clause. But probably between 80 and 90% of businesses that had business interruption insurance through their casualty and liability insurance had this exemption. And these policies are anywhere from about 90 pages to 300 pages. So many folks did not know that this exemption existed until after the fact. Some folks, have had these policies for 20, 30, 40 years. And this clause was put in about 14 or 15 years ago. So they were very unaware of it. And so you should assume that most businesses that carried casualty and liability insurance that included business interruption, there is a virus exemption, and that it is broadly interpreted as not covering COVID, even though Senator Hoylman mentioned, the civil authority shutdown as one of the hooks, and Mayor de Blasio in his shutdown orders even referenced that, partially because of some smart trial attorneys who were looking at making sure to have a foothold for litigation.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, seeing no more questions from the committee, again, still open to members of the public. I do want to mention a stat that was put into the comment box addressed to you, Jeannie. One of the attorneys present tonight said that this is an extremely important issue near the top of the list of concerns that there are over 2,000 plus bars and restaurants members tell them about. So, you know, clearly very impactful for everyone around. So I haven't seen.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead, Assembly Member.
Please, you know, I've been on Zooms like this with whole hosts of different community boards, bids, alliances, etc. Please call your assembly member, call your senator, call the leadership of the Assembly and Senate. You know, if you're affected by this, we need to take action. I really do hope that we will be up in Albany in early to mid-September. We don't want to miss an opportunity. Please let your voices be known to your local representatives. It really does mean a lot, and your voices could help get something like this passed in the next few weeks.
Thank you so much. And that's actually a great segue to me asking if anyone wants to make a motion in support of these bills. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make the motion, and then we'll have someone second it.
Anton.
All right, I see Anton. Can we unmute my Anton so that we can have it on the record, please?
Make a motion to follow this rule and recommend it for passage.
Thank you. And it seems that that is seconded by Susan Steinberg.
That's correct.
Thank you. So let us do the roll call in support of the Assembly member's bill as well as the Senate bill on the record as well.
Okay. Committee members, I'll call your name and just declare in favor, against, abstain, or not entitled, please. Kyle Thud.
In favor.
Recorded. Matt Bondi. Matt had joined us earlier. Don't see him.
Okay, so please remember to unmute yourself.
Dan Devine.
Against.
Jeannie D'Onofrio.
In favor.
Paige Judge. Paige, if you could unmute yourself, please. Paige. We'll go to, has Youssef joined us? Nope. John Keller.
In favor.
Kathleen Kelly.
Kelly is in favor.
Anton Malner.
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Frank Scala, has he joined us? Nope. Seema Shah.
Abstain for cause.
Okay. Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
Okay. Paige.
In favor.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to 8 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention for cause not entitled. So the motion carries.
All right, thank you so much to the committee. And thank you again, Assembly member, for joining us. Thank you so much for being on the forefront of this and really pushing this. And we are obviously happy to support that bill going forward.
Thank you so much. It was so great talking to all of you. I hope you're well and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's go back to the agenda, please. Brendan, can we put the agenda back up?
Sure, just a moment. Just give me a moment. I will have it back up. Okay. Here we go.
Awesome. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we're also still joined by State Senator Brad Hoylman, who's not only involved with the previous bill, but has another bill as well on saving our storefronts. So again, thank you to the state senator and to his office and staff for joining us today and for providing us on more information about this particular bill.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I will be brief. You say presentation. I feel like I'm about to give my graduate thesis or something.
Right.
Making me a little nervous here. But no, I appreciate the seriousness with which you are approaching this issue because of its impact on Board 6 and so many other small businesses. Briefly, this bill, which we have called the Save Our Storefronts legislation, is S8865 A10901. I have to give a shout out to our Assembly member, Harvey Epstein. I don't know if he's here, but he's the Assembly sponsor and drafted the original version, with which then we drafted a subsequent version together. So definitely credit to Assemblymember Epstein. He's a great legislative partner, and like Assemblymember Carroll, is often like on the vanguard of these types of issues around equity for small businesses and tenants in particular. So the bill basically would set forth that the rent obligation of covered tenants, and the tenants that would be covered would be COVID-19 impacted small businesses and non-for-profits, would be limited. Their rent would be limited to the lesser of 20% of their actual income in a given month, or B, 1/3 of their contractual rent payment. Landlords of covered tenants would be required to waive 20% of the contractual rent. This is, the only way we see these small businesses surviving under this environment. The state of New York would establish a commercial rent relief program administered by the Department of Financial Services, consisting of up to $500 million in federal funding received by the state to provide financial assistance to impacted landlords to make up the difference between the reduced rent and that the tenants are required to pay in the contractual rent minus the waived 20%. The limited rent obligation would extend through 6 months following the expiration of the COVID-19 state of emergency. The bill would also prohibit landlords from imposing late fees, interest, or other penalties on covered tenants during the COVID-19 state of emergency, and imposes a blanket moratorium on eviction proceedings for covered tenants for the non-payment of rent through at least 30 days following the expiration of the COVID-19 state of emergency. And the question is, why is it important and urgent to take action on commercial rent relief now? I often get asked, what do you envision happening in New York if there is no rent relief? Well, we're already seeing the devastating impact of COVID-19 on small businesses across the state, in our neighborhood, and on our blocks. In New York City alone, over 3,000 small businesses have permanently closed, and that number's much higher, I'm sure, at this stage, since the pandemic began. And without some kind of intervention, that number is only going to, continue to climb. The number one reason these businesses are shutting down is an inability to afford overdue rent because of mandated shutdowns, plummeting revenue, disappearance of tourism, and what Assemblymember Carroll was talking about. Insurance coverage that basically doesn't work because of non-physical damage of a virus, even when they do have pandemic insurance the insurance companies are trying to squeeze out of it. And if we don't do anything, our neighborhoods are just going to be full of empty storefronts. I mean, we saw that happening before the virus. I conducted a study in our Senate district where we surveyed, this was a few years ago, Chelsea and Bleecker Street. And if folks remember how thriving Bleecker Street was, 7 years ago, and then how it just became a ghost town. And we call the study Bleecker on Bleecker, because we love a pun, but also because it's the reality of the fact that we found then that close to 1/5 of the storefronts were shuttered due to rising rents, and the mentality of some landlords, not all, but for some landlords to look beyond their current tenant into maybe what they call a credit-worthy tenant or some cash cow, always chasing the next, kind of rainbow. I'm devastated by a story that I read recently in the blog Eater, where a restaurant called the Banty Rooster opened just a few months before the pandemic to great fanfare. A young woman and her partner came from Denver, Colorado, to bring what they considered authentic Southwestern cuisine to New York City, particularly the Village. They had great reviews. The pandemic hit. They went to their landlord to try to seek a negotiation. Landlord basically told them to flip off, work harder is what the landlord told the entrepreneur who started the Banty Rooster. You know what she's doing? She's shutting down. She's going back to Denver, Colorado, and she's going to open her restaurant there. She's basically given up on New York, and we can't let that narrative win during this time. There's so many naysayers out there, not Jerry Seinfeld, but so many others.
Yeah, the only one.
who want to say that New York is over, and if the state of New York doesn't intercede, we're going to give them more grist for that very negative argument. None of us believe that, but we got to help our small businesses in the meantime. So it's the mom and pop businesses we're going to be losing. It's the lifeblood of our city and communities, not just in New York City, but across the state. Now, this proposal, to be very clear, is dependent on federal funding coming through and being dedicated to commercial rent relief. What are we doing? I get asked to ensure that the funding comes through and is allocated accordingly. Well, we have to emphasize that the shared sacrifice between businesses, landlords, and the government only works if the state is able to provide funding to help offset the reduced rent that tenants will be paying. I mean, someone's got to pay. There is no such thing as a free lunch. And for landlords, particularly small landlords, they've got to put food on their table, and they've got banks to answer to, and they're family-owned businesses in many cases. So we can't be neglectful of that concern. We've been working, and urging our congressional representatives to stand strong in negotiations between the House and the Senate. I mean, things are so highly politicized now. To be very candid, I'm less optimistic than I was just a few weeks ago, as we're in the middle of, the political season, and you see the shots being fired tonight. I'm sure they'll come at the various political conventions. But even if we do receive federal funding, there's no guarantee that without passage of the bill or similar proposals, there's one that's carried by my colleague, Senator Mike Gianaris, there's no guarantee that funds are going to be dedicated to rental relief. That's why these types of information sessions are so important, to build the kind of groundswell support that's necessary. Now, what about businesses that have already closed or will close in the coming months? Are they going to be able to retroactively access this relief? We don't really know, to be honest. There's no one size fits all. Assuming that we can get something like this passed in Albany, and given the time crunch that we have here, it's not clear. But the way the bill's currently drafted, the bill would be deemed to be in effect as of March 7th, 2020, the day that this COVID-19 state of emergency was signed by the governor. So what that would mean for an individual business and not-for-profit would be essentially factually dependent on when and to what extent they were impacted by the COVID-19 shutdown and other restrictions. We're getting, great response from colleagues. Co-sponsorships are, we've only had a week, but we're getting some co-sponsorships. But there's a lot of interest. And I have on the phone with me both Sam Vasquez, who not only, of course, as you know, is our legislative aide for CB6, but also helps as draft legislation, along with Kendall Jacobson, who's our legislative director, so they can ask any specific technical questions you might have. But to be very candid, this late August kind of time frame is a difficult one for us. So that's why an outside push from, from a resolution like yours is crucial. So I'm really happy to spend time with you on this and really appreciate the fact that you're asking us to be here. But we don't know what the time frame is going to be. And if we do meet, there's no guarantee that this is going to be on the docket. So by building legislative support, we do two things. We generally elevate this, the issue of commercial rent relief among our legislative colleagues and leaders. And two, we provide our colleagues with some concrete proposals that we think can address the issue in some equitable way. So even if this bill itself doesn't pass, or even if Assembly Member Carroll's bill itself doesn't pass, it's important that we get these issues in the conversation. And it's important that bills represent the concerns of small business owners and the plight they face, because it's just so much more tangible, and it gives us a point for advocacy. And so that's why, I think it's key that we continue to push these. Now there is a website around this issue called Save Our Storefronts. You can just Google that. And they've done a great job. Our friends at Cooper Square Committee, the tenant and small business advocacy organization down on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and they've collected supporters. They have a list of small businesses. They have stories. They have a video. They've done a great job in beating the drum. So I have to give them credit for promoting this bill and making it a priority because it matters to them. There's a petition. There's a call script that you could use to call your legislators. There's a social media toolkit. They have hashtags, an organizational endorsement template letter that, should you support it, CB6 can just borrow from if you wish. There's another event that we're having soon on September 1st, where again, we're going to be organizing around this bill with all the advocates under the aegis of Cooper Square. So thank you so much. Happy to answer specific questions. And again, thanks to Kendall and Sam for being on the line, and really appreciate you inviting me. That's my graduate thesis.
A+. Just a couple of questions to start off.
I just want to pass. I just want to pass.
All right, it was satisfactory. So as we get some hands up, just have some, specific questions. I know it is explained a little bit in the bill, but just so that everyone can hear about it. So in terms of the lesser of 20% or the 1/3, so just to reiterate, they would pay the landlord lesser of 20% of its revenue or 1/3 of the contractual rent per month. Just wondering, how were those calculations determined?
Well, we basically sought advice from small business advocates as to what was reasonable, and proceeded on that basis. And again, none of this is written in stone. If a bill like this were to pass in Albany, and frankly, Assemblymember Carroll's, we'd expect to see some, negotiations.
Pushback.
But
Yeah.
Kendall, do you have
Okay,
anything
yeah,
to
just
add on
curious
that?
if-
Kendall or
No,
Sam?
no. I guess is the question just how was the level determined, or
Yeah, because is that too low? Is that too high? Just wondering where the 20% of revenue or 1/3 of rent.
We
came
got
up.
it from, that was what we found was reasonable, and we kind of based it on that determination from input from advocates.
Okay. And then going to a point that you had made earlier about impacted landlords, because as we know, some landlords are people who are being affected by this as well. It's not always the big corporate, landlord owners. You had mentioned if the waiving of the 20% or the 1/3, or the 20% or the 1/3, what resources are there for those landlords who are impacted by loss of income or any other, economic impact by this bill?
so within the bill
go ahead,
itself?
Kendall.
Yeah, I was just going to say within the bill itself, the Department of Financial Services is directed to establish a rent relief program for impacted landlords. So it would provide, I believe, up to $500 million in federal funding. So it would be in part, of course, reliant on the federal government to step up and provide New York State's aid in this issue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I see 2 hands up. We'll start off with Dan Devine.
Hi, Senator Hoylman. I've liked you since I found out that you grew up in West Virginia.
Really? Are you from West Virginia?
No, but I was best man at a wedding in Wheeling. My friend grew up there.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I grew up in a town so small that in order to get the Federal Express guy to deliver to my house, I had to tell him to take a left at the barn on the dirt road that said, chew mail pouch tobacco, treat yourself to the best. Yes.
Great. I still have some moonshine that his cousin gave me.
Oh, you should definitely maybe.
Wait, this is being transcribed, so never mind.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna say.
I didn't see your application, Dan.
Yeah, call your local police precinct. There may be some sort of amnesty for that if you turned it in.
Thank you. So I was just curious I know that this is sort of something that you want to do as an advocate.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily know if and when it could be passed, but what does it look like potentially, like best case scenario for this being negotiated, passed, and maybe kind of money in the pockets? Because I have a couple of friends who run businesses, specifically restaurants in Manhattan, and they're not looking at what's happened several months ago. They're figuring out, should I keep my business open next week?
No.
Yes or no?
It's a really hard question. We were asked that, like, do they make a business decision on the anticipation of a bill like this passing? And I can't, to be very candid, I cannot offer them that the confidence that we're going to pass something like this. Things are so volatile. The state's budget deficit is so enormous, and the federal response has been so uneven that I think it'd be irresponsible for me to say, yeah, go for it. Hold on out. I'm hopeful that, again, as I kind of mentioned with Assemblymember Carroll's bill, the fact that we are serious about a bill like this, I hope it brings landlords to the bargaining table so that your friends who own the restaurant have some leverage with their landlord, or the landlord has some, hope that he or she can make some of what their losses are back. Kendall or Sam, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of putting a proposal out that, like the senator said, is intended to have some skin in the game for everybody, because we're all struggling and our struggles are shared. So, I think this is obviously dependent on a lot of things and the federal government coming through for us. But in the meantime, we need to, I think, recognize that so many are hurting, and more are facing homelessness than ever before, and this is facing the loss of their businesses than ever before. And I think we're just encouraging everybody to come to the table, like the senator said, and to find solutions that maybe weren't something we would have seen before this, but this is an extraordinary time that requires extraordinary circumstances.
I know this might not necessarily be the most popular opinion, but my friends who own these establishments say the best thing that you can do is help them open.
Help them open. Meaning?
Or dining.
Oh, yes.
Because if they haven't gone out of business yet, it's a long leeway, 6 months, 9 months, a year to get the money. Like they need the revenue now. They need to pay their light bill.
Absolutely. I hear you on that. I hope that I hope that we extend outdoor dining for them. I hope that we, are in a place that the public health experts can recommend indoor dining. I think, I'm going to defer to the public health officials on that portion of it. But I think outdoor dining has been, very successful. I know there've been issues around some neighbors and, having a newly formed restaurant outside of your window hasn't always worked. But in most cases, the response we've received, at least at the state level, as a senator, has been very positive. So I am very, very much in agreement with your sentiment.
Thank you, Dan. Next up, we have John.
Yeah, first of all, Senator, I totally support this. I think it's great. I have a comment, and that is I have a friend of mine who's fortunate enough to own several buildings, and he's been working, out of his way to work with his tenants. So is there that there could be some provision, for landlords that have been decent, as this is rolled out, I think would be wise. He's been really bending over backwards with his tenants. And then the question I have is, you might have already addressed this, and it flew by me, but what is the test for eligibility? I mean, I'm assuming that, this is not intended for the local Starbucks or Dwayne Reed that might have lost some business over the last few months.
Yeah, it's a state standard small business definition.
Okay.
And nonprofit, which in New York State is one that has fewer than 100 employees and is independently owned and operated.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the bill also specifically through it says like 25 or fewer employees as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That rules out Starbucks. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure that will be up for discussion too, but when you're back in Albany. But,
so we further drill down. Is that right, Kendall, to 25?
Yeah, just to clarify, it's 25 or less employees currently under the bill.
Yeah, I think technically in New York State, a small business is 100, but our bill goes further to 25. That's right.
What does your average restaurant in New York have for employees?
Good question.
I'm not sure that off the top of my head. That's a good question. I'll certainly need to look that up. But we do anticipate that this would affect the vast majority of restaurants in the city.
And that was actually something that we had put in our resolution almost 2 years ago on the commercial rent control, was that we wanted a defined definition of small business, because I believe like federal level is like 500 or less, state is something like 100 or less, and then obviously the city has different criteria for that. So, but yeah, that's something to keep in mind too. Paige, I see your hand up as well. You have a question?
It's just a comment. I ordered dinner tonight from a place that I've been ordering since the epidemic, and unfortunately, it was going to be taken over. but I spoke to the fellow who's taking it over and said, unless and they are under 25 employees, unless something is going to happen, whether we're going to reopen the insides of restaurants or they're going to come up with some way they can make business, they're going to have to close because they can't afford to stay open. And it's because of the rent and also the lack of business. I mean, takeout is one thing, but you really need, if they reopen, they won't have that many people in there. They're going to be limited, you know.
Yes. The social distancing is going to have an enormous impact on their ability to, that's why the outdoor dining is going to be, you know, is going to be, you know, has given some of these restaurants a necessary lifeline.
But it's a shame because this particular place has been in this neighborhood for over 30 years.
Which one is it?
It's the Bravest. It's
Right.
up on was it 37th and 2nd?
Yeah, it's right on 38th. It's right across the street from me. But it's new ownership coming over.
Well, actually, he hasn't officially taken it over because he said if things don't improve, why should he bother to take it over? He's taking it over from a relative.
Yeah.
And he, you know, it's a shame because I'd like to see it stay there. The food is decent and, you know, they're very new.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Paige. So I don't see any more questions from the committee or any questions or comments from the public. Does anyone have a motion to make in support of Senator Hoylman's bill, Save Our Storefronts?
Yeah, I move it.
Is that you, John?
Yeah, sorry.
So what is your motion?
In support of Senator Hoylman's bill, Save Our Storefronts.
I'll second.
And who seconded that? And that's
Kevin.
seconded by Kevin.
Okay.
Okay. So Cody, can you do the roll call, please?
Okay, once again, committee members, I'll call your name and just declare in favor, against, abstain, or not entitled. Kyle Thide.
In favor?
Matt Bondi. Okay, Dan Devine.
In favor.
Jeannie D'Onofrio.
In favor.
Paige Judge.
In favor.
Yusuf hasn't joined us. John Keller.
In favor.
Kathleen Kelly.
In favor.
Anton Malner.
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Seema Shah.
Abstain for cause, not entitled.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
9 in favor, no against, and 1 abstention for cause. The motion carries.
Well, thank you so much. If I could just finish by saying I'm so appreciative of the support and want to thank again Assemblymember Epstein for his partnership in this.
Yeah, and thank you again, Senator Hoylman, and to your staff as well, particularly Sam and Kendall, for your great work and leadership on this, and for being such great community advocates. Really appreciate that.
Thanks. Pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Okay. All the best.
Enjoy your nights. Brendan, can we go back to the agenda, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So again, in the same spirit of the last 2 agenda items, we have another presentation from the Comptroller's Office, and they have their Save Main Street initiative to help small businesses. So today we're joined by Adam Foreman. Thank you for giving your time today, and thank you for your work on this as well. Would love to hear what you have to present to us. Thank you so much.
Adam, I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you for having me. And Adam Foreman, I'm the Chief Policy and Data Officer with the Office of the Comptroller. I focus a lot on economic policy, transportation policy, and obviously this is the highest priority right now is saving small businesses, or at least one of the absolute major priorities. Hopefully some of you are able to look at the Main Street report. I think it It was an analysis of a lot of things that we see walking down the street right now. What all of us know are our small businesses, our commercial corridor businesses are really struggling right now. You know, the restaurants, the bars, the nail salons, the barber shops. These businesses are under extraordinary financial pressure. We've already seen about 1,300 restaurants close, 1,000 retail businesses close. This is permanently. You know, a lot of them are closed at the moment or teetering towards collapse, and we can see worse outcomes as the winter enters. And this is not just about the businesses and the entrepreneurs and the community, but the employees themselves. About 200,000 jobs have been lost in the restaurant businesses, 71,000 in retail, 36,000 in personal services. So just an extraordinary loss of jobs, and especially with the pandemic, unemployment insurance lapsed. We're seeing people really struggle due to this, staggering unemployment. So the situation is dire, and then the PPP loan wasn't enough. Only about 43% of New York City businesses, Main Street commercial corridor businesses, actually received a PPP loan. Those weren't enough dollars in the first place, and so few actually qualified for various reasons. The application process was a challenge in the beginning in terms of connecting with banks, distrust of government that it was actually going to be forgivable, lack of information, lack of HR and accounting and financial support, whatever it might be. It's been a real challenge. So with this in mind, with this backdrop, with this need to support our small businesses, because it's what makes our communities so vital. This is where how we conceive of New York City, and where we congregate with our neighbors, our friends, where we meet people is along our commercial corridors, in our coffee shops and restaurants and bars. In order to support these businesses and support our neighborhoods, we put together a pretty broad agenda. Lots of pieces of New York City legislation, but some at the state level as well that we've been pushing for, and we'll talk about that a bit. Generally, they fit in 3 buckets. First is supporting existing businesses, ones that are struggling right now, getting money to them immediately for support. The second is how do you support entrepreneurs so that we can fill a lot of those commercial vacancies that were already quite prominent before this pandemic and now have really become quite a rash. And lastly is how do we invest in local neighborhoods with the kind of sentiment that, it's one thing to say shop local, but if people can't access their commercial corridors, if they can't spend time there for various reasons because of accessibility issues, for transportation issues, they can't shop local. So we need to think about investing in transportation and access and amenities in our commercial corridors if we're going to make them more vital and more accessible, more accessible. So for the first bucket, how we save existing businesses, some of these we've had progress on already, and some we're still pushing for. Providing tax credits for independent businesses, particularly the business income tax credit, to help with reopening expenses. Allow businesses a cure period for addressing and fixing violations, rather than fining them immediately. We've seen pretty aggressive action by the SLA to fine businesses. We think that's, most cases pretty counterproductive. We need to be working with businesses, not hurting them. And this goes against the whole gamut of DOHMH and DOB fines. I think this is not just now, but permanently. We need to be thinking about how people can address and resolve their violations, not fine them. Another one is permanently capping the fees on the Grub hubs, the third-party deliveries, and then providing legal assistance for businesses that are having rental disputes. And that was already actually, the City Council has taken that up. The mayor has reinstituted the program, and City Council is going to be funding it. So we're pretty excited to see that that's been taken up, and businesses who are in negotiation with their landlords can actually get that legal support. And then it goes to boosting entrepreneurship, which is going to be a real, this is not just the now, but for several years. So we're going to unfortunately see a lot of these vacancies, and we need to address them as quickly as possible. I think the biggest one we talked about is just waiving permitting and inspection fees for the next 10 months. Want to create this rush to open up businesses now when it's actually cheaper than ever to reopen businesses. So once the pandemic is over, having a 10-month period of waiving inspection fees and permitting fees to really incentivize businesses to open up immediately. Expediting launching of businesses, we think is really crucial. Not going to DOB and DOHMH and DCA, but having a one-stop shop. They do this with restaurants to an extent. This should be for everybody. Comprehensive inventory of vacancies, so that if you're a potential business owner, you can look and see which businesses, commercial spots are vacant, what their, and then what, I'm seeing a scroll through, okay. And then, helping them connect it and find locations. And then finally, Okay, and two more on that front. One is the tax incentives in commercial corridors, where there are high vacancies to incentivize folks to reopen. And then an important one we think, which we've pushed in the past, is a Re-Entrepreneurship Program. About 50% of small businesses are owned by people who are over 55 years old. They're going to retire, and a lot of those businesses, especially now when dealing with the hassle of this pandemic, the frustration, and those businesses are just going to disappear. Even ones who are profitable, ones who have suppliers, ones who have an existing business. So thinking about re-entrepreneurship programs that they do in Montreal and also in Barcelona, where you think about finding potential re-entrepreneurs who would inherit those businesses, where they don't have a family member or a partner who would take over that business. So connecting aspiring business owners to existing businesses that are community pillars and are still quite profitable. And then lastly is the investing in neighborhoods. Talking about what I said before, where we need to make neighborhoods accessible, whether it's investments in bike lanes and bus lanes, so people can get to their businesses. It's making commercial corridors accessible to young families and the elderly and everyone else, with investment in curb cuts and street seating and public bathrooms and bus shelters along our commercial corridors. People can spend time there and get to commercial corridors, and then repurposing street space for restaurants, which we're doing now, but also for retail and other community uses, making use of our street space so that we can help businesses right now. So yeah, that's the core pillars of our report. We've had some success in pushing for, as I said, legal assistance for businesses. We're in discussion about opening street space for some retail. We've been talking with the Bid Association, who has really been pushing for that. So we're continuing to push this agenda, but we think it's something that's, for now and for the years to come, this is a way to kind of re-envision our commercial corridors and help small businesses both now and in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, if anyone from the committee has questions, please raise your hand. Just to get things started off, Adam, one of the things that I noticed about this report compared to some of the other bills that we've seen is that it doesn't, at least to me, appear to be based on any big federal funding requests or anything, really aside from that. Can you describe if there are, if this is more about, policy changes and, reshaping things based on, making systems and processes more efficient, or is it more of like, there's going to be a request of like, the based on, all of this is going to be based on a state budget, city budget at a later point?
Yeah. And we tried to really focus on what the city can do and what the city can do now. What happens in Congress is out of our hands. It's extraordinarily frustrating. We've been pushing for more federal support. We're in constant communication with Jerry Nadler and other folks in Washington, but we realize that there is a logjam. And so we need to focus on what we can do. Waiving the 25% liquor license fee for restaurants and bars, like that's something we can do now. It's not a big revenue driver, but it's something that's a burden for restaurants and for bars. Expanding some of that, one-stop shop for opening up a business and waiving fees for opening a business. These are things we can do really quickly, allowing retail space. So yeah, so that was very much the intention, was to think about what the city can do and to a lesser extent what the state can do. One thing we do talk about is the PPP loan. Right now it's lapsed, but there was $130 to $150 billion still in it. There's a chance that it actually could be renewed. And as we mentioned, only 43% of commercial corridor small businesses applied for it. So if that is renewed, which we think there's a chance, if anything is going to be renewed, it's going to be that one. We really want to work with bids, work with other community affairs organizations within the mayor's office and with comptroller's office as well, and go store to store, business to business, and getting folks to sign up for that PPP loan. Like it's $150 billion was left on the table. A lot of small businesses didn't take advantage, and we need to get that money.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's go to Matt Bondi first.
Thank you, Kyle. Forgive me, but I tried to catch as quickly as I could some of the recommendations there, but one that struck me or stuck out in my mind was the ban on expediters at the DOB. And I'm curious what the thinking is behind that. Is it because it's a bar, hiring an expediter is a bar to some small businesses?
I think it's less like banning as in not allowing them, and more as in those expediters should be in the DOB. We should be making things so quick so you don't need an expediter. I think it is the logic there. It's a testament to how slow our bureaucracy is, and the lack of coordination between the agencies and the DOB is actually been better to extent on making digital submissions easier, but we're still seeing a very slow system that we need liaisons and advocates within city government to make that process move faster.
All right, thank you.
And we've seen this in other places. I mean, San Francisco and Los Angeles have made decent progress. In San Francisco, they have a single digital portal where you can get all the documentation for applying for a business, and you can submit that documentation across different agencies and city, state, federal. In Los Angeles, they do have like a single point of entry, Expediters for businesses, so you don't need to go to 10 different agencies. So we've seen progress in other places. It's not perfect, but it's time for New York City to pick up the slack as well.
Thank you. All right, Dan, you're up.
Yeah, Adam, thank you. I know, as Matt said, there's a lot definitely to go through there. So I appreciate everything that your office is doing. And I actually really like the reports that you come out with. You guys
appreciate
are, honestly, I mean, we hear from a lot of elected officials, but it's one office that I do feel like is really trying to be forward thinking and look at the data, which I love. But
and Adam, that is actually really high praise coming from Dan, who is the committee contrarian. So
I'm serious.
I'm
I
extra
like
appreciative.
I like it. But one thing though, of all of the things that just stuck out to me that I'd maybe ask you guys to reconsider is the idea of capping the percentage that the delivery services take. Because first of all, it's onerous, it's terrible. I call up directly, right? I don't do, because I know how horrible it is for those businesses. So if I could reimagine it, and I think your office should as well, is instead of capping the amount that they're taking down from 30% to 20%, why don't you reimagine it and give transparency to the consumer? So allow the business to charge 30% extra if you go through Grubhub versus if you call up. Because it's better for the business that way. You're actually saving them more versus just trying to, limit a startup company.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Actually, talking to a bunch of businesses in my area and in the city, in all 5 boroughs, there was actually somewhat of a pause for a couple of months when businesses were closed down in March and April, where you saw them get new, relationships with new delivery companies looking for lower rates, or for reservation companies making reservations. Businesses are living day to day, and they'll take the first company that approaches them. Whereas when they had this time to actually shop the market and look for the best rates, they took advantage in this period, which hopefully is beneficial in the long term. So I think, to your point, being more transparent about the services that are available and what their rates are could go a really long way. So they're making those decisions day to day and not just when there's this very unfortunate 2-month pause. So I think that point is very well taken.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing as a credit card company. Now that a small business has the ability to charge you extra if you use American Express.
Yeah.
So when I see that and I understand that, I'm more likely to pay cash. And I think it's the exact same thing. Consumers are more informed, businesses are better off, and I just think it's much better for everyone involved.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to hear your perspective on this, and open it up to all of you. One of the hospitality, not alliance, but hospitality coalition has been pushing for allowing restaurants to charge a COVID-19 surcharge. That's not allowed by the Department of Consumer Affairs, but a 5% surcharge so that they can increase their revenues, cover some of the major losses. Does that make folks uncomfortable?
So we actually wrote a bill about this, or sorry, not a bill, a resolution on this the other month. I think it was like in June or July, because we had started seeing this actually pop up in other areas of the country where they were calling it like a COVID surcharge.
Exactly.
And so for us, the issue that we actually had with that, because I think at the end of the day, we all want to support businesses, especially like in our local, neighborhoods. One of the things that we actually, the purpose behind the bill was more of like consumer protection. We wanted to make sure that these surcharges were public, that, things weren't, increasing, and that, or you purchase something and then all of a sudden you saw on the bill, like you're being charged the surcharge. Many of us would probably honestly pay it, but the idea of not being educated about that before purchasing a good or service was the issue that we had. So we put something out mostly just about being sure that that was transparent, and didn't honestly have strong feelings about the charge itself, because I think in that case, much to Dan's point, was as a consumer, once you're educated about that, you can make your own financial decision about it to say, hey, you know what, I don't like this, I'm going to move and get my coffee somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, I get it. We're all trying to, get back and make sure that, New York City gets back to where it was. And yeah, I can, put in a little bit of that. It's kind of like with some of these third-party apps, they give you the option to like round up your bill, and that, remaining goes to like COVID relief or whatever it is.
Interesting.
So the fact that you have the option to say, oh, I want to do that, or I don't want to participate in that, is great. And I always do that every time I, purchase something online. I say, yeah, I'll, round up and donate the difference to COVID. But I was appreciative that I knew about that before them just rounding it up for me.
Gotcha.
So we had something about that. But yeah, for the rest of the committee, does anyone have feelings about like the charge itself? Like we already put something out about consumer protection to make sure that we're educated about it. But I guess Adam's point is more to like, how do you feel about it itself? Matt, I think I see you.
Yeah, I don't think there should be COVID-19 surcharges. Restaurants are struggling, people are struggling all over the city. And that to the extent that part of our thinking was that it not only should it be transparent, but you should know in advance before you go so you can decide whether or not to incur a charge like that. But that it should be directly related to any increase that an establishment is forced to bear because of protections for the consumer. Like we were speaking about this in the context of dentist's office and the need for them to clean in between each visit and to provide masks and things of that nature. So when we discussed this, we thought that it was important that it not only be made clear in advance that there was such a fee. I personally objected to the fees at all. And I said, if there have to be fees, then they should be known in advance and directly related to an increase or an expense that was directly attributable to protecting the consumer and the people that work at the establishment. So I'm personally against charging any kind of COVID-19 type of surcharge. But if you do, it should be directly related to the increased cost brought to bear on the establishment.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't want to divert the conversation, but I was interested to hear what you guys thought. That's really helpful.
No, that's definitely a great, topic for a more in-depth conversation at another point too. Seema, you're up.
Hey, Adam, I just wanted to say hi because good. Our paths crossed when I worked at LaGuardia. I'm actually now at the state, and there's a flurry of dinner making activity behind me, but otherwise I would definitely say hi, and I'll drop you a note as well. But I'm just curious, I'm at the state now, and it's kind of piggybacking off Kyle's initial question around, after your presentation, are there, I saw the note about the Long Island Railroad and the MTA and potentially lowering some of the paywalls around that. Are there other kind of state-oriented implications, within the context? And I know that there's, like you said, 27 or something points, but other state level implications that you can kind of share at a high level. And I'll be happy to go through all of it myself. But.
Yeah. I'd have to go through all of them to have a full litany, but the two that I recall off the top of my head, one is on the business tax credit, providing a credit for the business income tax to go towards reopening expenses, which might be PPP equipment and outdoor dining and any other expenses that would need state approval. That business income tax credit for small businesses, which we call businesses under $5 million of revenue. There was a question about how you define a small business. So that would take state legislation. There's a similar business income tax credit for health science businesses. So there is a precedent for it at the state level. And then the other one, the SLA, in terms of just, it's a difficult situation in terms of enforcing social distancing, but they've been very aggressive at the city level. We think not having the food requirement when you sit down is rolling that back would be a positive development. And also just extending permanently the getting alcohol to go. This is not just going to be for the pandemic, but for a long time. Businesses have to recoup their dollars. So allowing that to be a long-term reform, we think it is important. That could be done by executive order. And there was one other one. The last one was using SNAP benefits towards restaurants. So that was actually allowed by congressional legislation that certain seniors and those with disabilities who might not have access to kitchens or might have more difficulty preparing food for themselves could use their SNAP benefits, not just at grocery stores, but also at restaurants. And New York State hasn't allowed that. A couple other states have taken up the congressional allowance on that. So we think that's another pathway, something to help restaurants and to also help folks who are pretty isolated right now with this pandemic and might not have help with cooking and with accessing grocery stores, that they can use those food stamps for, or SNAP benefits, sorry, for at restaurants.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to invite Jim Collins from the public who has a question or comment rather. This goes to another point that we brought up earlier in the summer about third-party apps showing businesses as closed when they're not. So we voted on it earlier in the summer to make sure that, you know, third-party apps weren't doing that. Obviously, we're going to bring it to the full board in September, but can we get Jim to just speak a little bit?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to raise it again, and we had discussed it as was mentioned earlier before our summer hiatus, but there are a number of restaurants where they were members of one of the delivery apps, and for whatever reason the relationship ended, and the delivery apps are continuing to hold the business basically hostage on the internet and saying that they're closed when they're not. So in other words, if you wanted to call them up and get a delivery from them, you were more than capable of doing so. But if you went to the internet and Googled them, and you would assume that they were closed. So I'm just wondering if maybe the controller might want to issue some notes on that.
No, that's really interesting.
Actual statement.
A retaliatory measure that's totally unacceptable.
It's apparently happened in a few other states. We discussed it, as I said, prior to our summer hiatus, but it is an issue, and it's particularly tough on the very small guys who, you know, are trying to maintain their business and their delivery business during the pandemic, and they can't do it. So
important than
that's really
capping a surcharge.
Pardon me?
More important than taking reducing the amount that an app can charge.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. You know, my deli down the street rather, that I've been using, you know, for 40 years, was shown as closed by his former delivery app.
Please, yeah. I'm gonna in my provide my email in the messages if I can, because please send that to me, because that's an issue we should follow up on, or I'll follow up with you guys and provide my email.
Okay. I think we have a resolution on it, or we have one in draft.
Yeah, so we had voted on it. We can send it over, but obviously we have to bring it before the full board in September. So that's when we'll discuss that.
Yeah, it's time for us to follow up on. That's great.
Okay. Jeannie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I don't know if it's been reported in something like Eater, you know, like keep on trying. If your restaurant is listed as closed, contact them directly and explain why. I just don't know if it's just something people just, you know, I don't really know how widespread this information is. A small deli doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, I might have to jump off. I have to help my wife putting down our 11-month-old. So let me.
So yeah, so I don't see any other new questions. So does anyone want to make a motion on this to support this plan put forth by the comptroller?
That'd be great.
Are those? I see hands. Okay, just making. Paige, are you trying to say something?
I'm trying to, but I can't get my thing to say, raise my hand. I would like to make a motion to support the actual controller's document. I'm sorry.
The main tree. All right, is that seconded by anyone?
I can second it.
All right, seconded by Jeannie. Cody, could you go through the roll call, please?
Sure. Kyle Thide.
In favor?
Matt Bondi. Matt? You're still here?
Yes.
What is your vote? In favor?
Yes.
Dan Devine?
In favor.
Jeannie D'Onofrio?
In favor.
Paige Judge?
In favor.
John Keller?
In favor?
Kathleen Kelly?
Pass.
Abstain?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Anton Malner?
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe?
In favor.
Seema Shah?
In favor.
Susan Steinberg?
In favor.
That's 10 in favor, 1 abstention, no against. The motion passes.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you again to Adam for joining us and for providing all of that information. And please do extend our thanks to your staff and team, and of course the comptroller, for all of the great leadership.
We appreciate that. Yeah, thanks so much for having me in. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. And Brendan, can we go back to the agenda, please? Yep. All right, so we have 2 applicants who are here with us today who are applying for new licenses. So the first one that we have up is Coyote Ugly Saloon, which is moving to 233 East 14th Street. So for those who are new, I know we haven't done applications in a while. So just to be on the same page, all of the applicants who are here on behalf of their application, we're going to unmute you. Please introduce yourself to the committee and of course to anyone from the public who is attending. Please state your name, your relationship to the application and to the establishment, and then please run through the application that you're applying for. So go through the, a little bit of your professional background, the concept of the establishment, and we'll go from there. And if anyone has any questions from the public or the committee, again, as always, please do raise your hand and submit comments through the Q&A function, and we'll go through those.
Kyle, just a reminder, yep. I put in the chat for the committee members a link where they can view each of the applicants' 30-day notices and submitted questionnaires.
Thank you.
Kyle, it's
all right,
Max
so first
Bookman.
up,
Could I get started?
Go ahead.
Great.
It's good to see you again.
And likewise, and thank you, Kyle, and good evening, CB6. It's nice to see everyone again, virtual as it may be. Some of you may know me. I do see some new faces here as well. My name is Max Bookman. I'm an attorney. My firm represents bars and restaurants and alcohol licensing matters throughout the state and the city. I'm regularly before this board. Before I talk about Coyote Ugly, which I'm here to talk about tonight, I just wanted to spend 60 seconds or so wearing the other hat that I wear, which is counsel to the New York City Hospitality Alliance, our industry trade association here in the city that represents over 2,000 bars and restaurants. And I just, on behalf of the Alliance, I want to applaud you for the conversation that you just had over the past 3 agenda items. I get to go to many community board meetings, not just representing applicants, but representing the Alliance, and the degree of seriousness and sophistication with which you have approached these issues facing bars and restaurants with the speakers that you've invited to discuss to the committee members tonight is really exemplary. And on behalf of the Alliance, we really thank you for that and for your resolutions that you all passed tonight and voted on almost unanimously, supporting the business interruption insurance bill, the Save Our Storefronts bill, Controller Scott Stringer and all the great work that he's doing on behalf of small businesses. You know, the Alliance, we work with all of these elected officials and more, including folks at the State Liquor Authority and the governor's office. And we've started, you know, we've been doing this for over 6 years, but, you know, with COVID, it's really been kicking into high gear. Our bars and restaurants are at a crisis point, and we're really glad to see the members of this committee, at least, are recognizing that. And, you know, just in particular, there's some really good questions that I was silently applauding when I was listening. Dan Devine, you had some good questions about why in New York City can we not have indoor dining when we've met the same exact metrics as the rest of the state has for phase 4 reopening, yet in New York City, we can't have indoor dining and the rest of the city can. You know, there was some talk about outdoor dining, and if you're, you know, walking through the streets of the city, you see a lot of outdoor dining now. There's been expanded outdoor dining. The Alliance was behind the scenes developing that program. But outdoor dining was really just supposed to be a Band-Aid to help bars and restaurants bridge the gap until indoor dining. And, you know, even the largest outdoor dining areas, you know, what, 20 something seats. I mean, that's really nothing compared to indoor dining. And right now there is zero plan from the governor, zero plan from the mayor about when we are going to have indoor dining again. It's been safe in the rest of the state. So these are issues that the Alliance is constantly working on. And if any of you want to talk to me about it offline, I'd be happy to, because we really do appreciate the focus that I saw tonight. So switching gears from wearing
Max,
that.
you stole my new business report from later in the meeting. So please stick around after, because I'm bringing up actually indoor dining today. So please stick on for that.
Thank you, Kyle. Well, so then switching gears then from wearing that hat to the hat that I wore here tonight, which is representing Coyote Ugly. I think given the conversation that you all just had, this application is really fits the topic, because what we have here is a New York City institution. And so just to introduce who's here tonight, we have Liliana Lovell. She was one of the folks who turned her camera on earlier and was talking with the assemblyman about the issues that she's facing. She is the founder and CEO of Coyote Ugly. It's that Coyote Ugly, the one that opened on First Avenue between 9th and 10th over 27 years ago. She started it as a young entrepreneur in the year, or right around the year 2000. Actually, I think earlier than that. She'll correct me if I'm wrong.
1993.
93. 2000 was the movie. Started in 1993. She has an amazing story. You could read about her online, but you know the highlights of it are she realized that as a bartender, she was making a lot more money per night than she was at her internship. So she started off, you know, she moved into being a bartender and then created her own business. That business took off. The movie was made in the year 2000. And since then, she has opened other Coyote Uglies around around the country and around the world. There are over 20 Coyote Uglies now, all throughout the world internationally. But this one in New York is the first one. It was the original one, and it's a place that has not only been dear to her, but been dear to patrons and people who've lived in the neighborhood for almost 3 decades. And the reason why it's important to bring that Coyote Ugly is topical tonight is because Liliana and her business have been drastically and negatively impacted by COVID-19 and the impacts of it. They are not open. You know, they are really a bar, and they always have been. And their sort of method of operation is not an outdoor type of method of operation. They're not exclusively outdoor, so they've not been open. And you know, without getting into too many of the details, Liliana will get into more if she feels like it, but they're having trouble with their landlord, like so many other people are. And they're in a position now where they are forced to find a new home for their business that's been in the community, just south of the southern border of your community, you know, which has been their home for many years. They've now been forced to find a new one, and they found one, and it's right, like I said, it's right on the southern border of your community district. It's on the north side of 14th Street between 2nd and 3rd. It's a place that used to be a bar for many years. It was called the Blind Pig. So she's looking to replace a bar with another bar. But of course, it's not just any other bar. This is a bar that is a neighborhood New York institution. It's been around for 3 decades, and we hope that it'll be around for many, many years to come. So she's here, I'm here, we have the team here. We've submitted our questionnaire to you. We are happy to answer any questions that you have, but we really do hope that we can have your support tonight so that this important business can continue.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'm sorry, and just before, to cut you off, Kyle, just one more thing very briefly before you, if there are any questions before anyone asks them, I just wanted my client herself just to say hello and just say a few words.
Go ahead.
Well, honestly, you know, I knew a few years ago we would probably have to move, but now all of a sudden with COVID, it's put so much pressure on our business. We haven't been able to open. The landlord, we've been closed since March 16th. The landlord is giving us no reprieve on rent. So we're in a position where this is it. You know, that bar on 153 First Avenue will never open again. And I'm about to tear up thinking about it because that was my first bar at 25 years old. But what can I do? You know, we received PPP loans at $70,000. That's gone. We got declined for our disaster loans, so that's doesn't exist. The landlord, if you go by First Avenue, they've been doing construction on the building actually pre-COVID. So we're not even able to open because of the construction, yet they're asking for 80% rent, and our rent was $25,000. So that's just we can't do it. We're done there. So we went out, we started looking, and we found this spot. We love it. And you know, we're longtime operators. This is a place that in my mind will be open another 30 years. So that hope is that we go on 14th Street and, you know, we turn that into our home. The beauty now, the difference now that I'm in my 50s versus 25 years old is I've got a little bit more money. We're going to put a kitchen in. It's going to be a little bit nicer. I was just telling my son earlier that it's actually 3 blocks away from where he was born because he was born at Beth Israel. So, you know, I just want to make this our new home.
Thank you so much for that. And just before we get to the questions, you know, I know this is like a bittersweet moment for you, you know, because that is the original location. That was where you became the person you became to be. But at the same time, we're happy that you looked at our district, you know, to make your new home. And so we're excited to, you know, to work together and to make sure that, you know, hearing you call it home is really, really great for us, because for all of us, obviously, this is our home. And our, you know, our business operators are our people, you know, they're part of the family. And as you've heard from all the conversations we've had earlier tonight about making sure that business owners, small and then larger as well, are getting the protection and support that they need. And actually, I'm familiar with the bar even before it was probably, you know, appropriate for me to know about the bar. I was 2 years old when you started that in 1993, and you know, from the neighborhood, and was part of the boys club on 10th and A, so very close by. And so actually, I was biking around the neighborhoods just to check out how everything was going, and I saw that the location was closed, and didn't know what was going on with that. So to see your application was really heartening. And so part of, you know, this process is obviously we want to support businesses. We also want to make sure that we want to support the comfort and safety of residents and community members. And so obviously you've had an extensive career in operating the Coyote Ugly, not only in New York City, but throughout the country and the world. So a couple of questions that we have particularly about this block, as everyone can see the block, a lot more residential than your previous location. So in terms of noise level, and I know you put some of this in the application, but we also want to make sure that people from the public can hear about this. In terms of noise, crowd control, security, all of that. Obviously, the number one complaint that we always get is noise, and then not being able to walk in through their front door, or not feeling safe because people are congregating or, doing whatever it is. Obviously, that'll look a little different now because we're in a COVID world. But what are some of the, precautions that you were, taking for this location to make sure that any disruption is, as minimal as possible?
If I could just, before Liliana answers your question, if I could just frame it and then let her get into the details. You're absolutely right that that the comfort of neighbors is extremely important. One of the reasons why she found this location appropriate is that yes, it is more residential, but it is on 14th Street, which has a nice wide sidewalk. It's not 15th Street or 16th Street, which is much smaller. And she also found a location that its immediate previous use, for as far back as we could tell, at least 10 years, was a bar that, and we asked your office, if you had stipulations going back that far with the blind pig, but people were working remotely. I know Cody and Brennan are doing their best. We couldn't get those. That's okay. But from what we could tell on Yelp, and this community probably knows better, that bar was a late night bar. So the idea was not to replace a dry cleaners with a Coyote Ugly. It was to replace something that already had that use, which we know is important to this board and the neighbors for the right reasons. So that's just a general comment, but I will let Liliana get into the sort of the operational details of how she plans to operate this bar in a respectful manner.
Well, obviously I've been in New York. We signed the lease on First Avenue in November. It will be 28 years. Again, a little bit different. I was 25 years old and broke. Now I'm in my 50s. I actually put on the call, and if he's still listening, I had my construction person come on because I wanted him. I knew that noise would be something that we want to talk about. So I have him on if you want him to speak about some of the soundproofing we would do. So let me see if I can get him on. Kevin, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Bailey. I'm the Director of Design and Development for our development corporation. So noise ordinance issues are nothing new to us. We oftentimes go into similar situations. So it's hard to say without physically being in the building. We're in unprecedented circumstances here with COVID, but typically through certain specialized construction materials, acoustical dampening materials, in most cases, we can bring our sound pressure level from we hover around 100 dB, we can bring down to achieve maybe 75 decibels through like mass loaded vinyl, transducers, quiet rock. There's a litany of products on the market today that we can encapsulate the parcel with.
Also, just to mention that, we run on a jukebox and iPhone. So we're a regular bar. We don't have, I know the movie can kind of make people think one way, but the reality is we run a jukebox and then we'll have my iPod plugged in. And so we're really not any louder than a regular bar would be. But yes, people like Kevin go and help us make sure that we're doing the right thing for the neighbors.
Absolutely. I mean, my philosophy for our committee is always about being proactive, because, we want to make sure that you can call this home for many, many years to come. And, the number one thing that we always see is that people weren't proactive in addressing concerns from the neighbors. And so that's one of the reasons we always ask these questions, is to make sure, that we're thinking about these things, and that, we don't get to a situation where people are calling 311 and all of that, because we want to make sure that, that this is a great place for a business to thrive, and at the same time, a great place to live. So in terms of that, if one of the things that we ask for all operators is that to ensure that we're being proactive and that we avoid any sort of conflict, is to also have whoever the general manager is on site to have the information.
Brought her here today too.
Perfect. See, you're prepared. This is great.
Well, you want to know what? I want us to be part of the neighborhood. When I opened the other bar, I lived a half a block away for 10, 15 years. So I've actually, my guilty pleasure recently has been going on the apartment searches to find apartments right in the neighborhood. So, it's home. I was born and raised in New York, and, those are our people, and our regulars live there. They don't live very far from, where the other coyote was. And so we want to be happy there. We want for our next door neighbor to come, and bring our security guard a coffee, because they know each other. Like, that's part of kind of the culture that we like to bring to wherever we open.
And Kyle, if I could just add to that, even though this has the feel of a regular bar, just like Liliana said, I mean, they are at this point in time in this business's lifetime, they have become very professional and streamlined. I mean, they have a whole team now, and it's standard operating procedure for them in whatever city they're in to have a general manager who has a phone number that's available to neighbors, to the extent that there are any issues. That they could connect. The general manager for the First Avenue location is here tonight. I don't think she necessarily needs to speak at this moment, but she is here. Paula, she's been the GM for many years. The folks down in CB3 in the district where they're currently in have her number, and she, if we're fortunate enough to get your approval and are able to move into this new location, she'll be the general manager there as well. And it was already in the plan to offer her phone number, make it available, and we could do that in any way that you'd like.
Yeah, to me, actually, the divier, the better. But we just want to make sure that, that there's some.
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, do not expect the old coyote. This one's going to be nice. I already have a menu submitted, so not the same one, the same people.
New beginnings.
I'll still want to be on the floor.
Yeah. But we want to make sure that, there are signs encouraging people to be respectful of their neighbors, whether it's, smoking or sanitation or, noise, of course. And also that there's a number that the residents can reach for someone who's on site in case they do have complaints, so that they're calling you directly instead of calling, the police or 301, because oftentimes what we see is if there was just communication between the establishment and the residents, the thing would have been done in a couple of seconds instead of escalating. So we just want to make sure that we have that signage out there as well. But to get to the questions, I want to start off with Susan, and then we'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I have a very easy question. How many, I'm assuming you're going to have tables and chairs outside. I was just wondering how many.
So Susan, let me field that question since I'm dealing with it. So, it's an unusual time as an attorney who deals with city agencies right now, especially with sidewalk cafes. As part of the Alliance, we were part of the group that helped develop the current temporary DOT outdoor seating program. And that's been very successful and a helpful lifeline for bars and restaurants. But one of the consequences of that has been that the Department of Consumer Affairs, which I know you know, Susan, is responsible for licensing sidewalk cafes in the city. They've actually taken the position that they're no longer accepting sidewalk cafe license applications, and they're not going to be again until the DOT temporary outdoor seating program ends, which is currently slated for October 31st, but we've heard all sorts of rumblings behind the scenes and publicly that it's going to be extended later this year and perhaps even into next year, and who knows beyond that. So the reason I say that is there are different programs with one has a much more forgiving or lenient seating ability, the DOT program, than the DCA Sidewalk Cafe program does. We're in early stages of hiring an architect to do a DCA compliant sidewalk cafe plan, so we can get the number of tables and chairs for when DCA does start accepting sidewalk cafe applications again. But you know, we don't have that now. But obviously, we're going to want to have as many as we're legally allowed to, and for the duration of COVID, you know, keeping it so that it's appropriately socially distanced. So I guess that's
Did that answer your question?
That's a long way of saying
Yeah,
I don't know.
thank
but
you.
You know, we're looking.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Next up, Dan.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is, I really appreciate this because I think the fact that you're opening what you're opening with the franchises throughout the world, in fact, but you also represent sort of an iconic New York City establishment. I'm just curious for Liliana, in terms of everything that you've done over the years, starting a New York City establishment and then obviously getting, you know, famous because of the Eat, Love, Pray woman, right? To then be able to build basically an incredible business globally. How do you think about the things that are being proposed that you've heard tonight in terms of, you know, to save businesses, both on the small scale, as well as in terms of bigger scale, and like the landlords and kind of negotiating things, and from a bigger corporate perspective? Is there a difference that you see, or is it still all the same?
Well, so just so you understand, so my company, all these bars are separate LLCs. So just so you get a scope of it, the New York Bar received its PPP loan. That was $70,000. That's gone. $70,000. Our rent was $25,000. We have taxes, manager salaries, insurance, health insurance. So we're talking about such a small amount of money that was supposed to represent 1 to 2 months of being closed 6 months. That just, I don't know anybody who was able to let that money last this long. So, you know, for Coyote Ugly, every single bar around the world is all a separate little company. We've had to close our San Diego bar down because same issue as New York, a landlord that was unwilling to negotiate with us. There's just no way to pay these kind of rents and be able to be closed for 6 months. We got declined for our disaster loan. We don't know why that we got declined. The answers we've got is that, well, we're really busy, try again and try to activate your loan. The whole system has been awful. And honestly, the only country that I've seen with Coyote Ugly that's just as bad as us has been the UK. Everybody else seems to have helped both sides, helped the business owner and helped the landlords. Here, we don't seem to have, I don't feel like I have any rights right now. No rights. The landlord at 153 First Avenue, he stopped communicating. Like, he wants his money. He won't even take my calls or emails. I had to hire a lawyer. He's not even responding to the lawyer. So while I can still probably walk in the door of the bar, essentially he's made a nonverbal plea, say we're done, we're evicted. So it's absolutely heartbreaking what's going on. Everything that was done was very short. I would say that for me, because I am around the country and the world, I have access to more people. I spend more time during the day making phone calls to advisors. Hey, can you help me? You know, we don't know what we're doing. You know, when you guys were talking about the insurance, we had pandemic insurance. We're not getting paid out. So it's like, who can help us? Who can guide us? Accountants, what should we be using this money for? What, you know, is this forgiven? Is that not? Then you get the disaster loans, which aren't forgiven, they're a loan. This has been absolutely nightmarish. And I don't know, in places like New York where the rents are so high, I don't see how, you know, I was listening to the senator and these are nice words, but the reality is without immediate action, these places are closing down. And my understanding, according to the law, is that at the end of September, the tenants start losing some of their power. So that will go back to the landlords. And you're going to see more places closing, I think. If they weren't able to reopen, they'll start closing more places in October.
Thank you.
It's heartbreaking, heartbreaking.
Yeah. No, but that's why we appreciate your input and why we're here tonight. Kevin, you're up.
Yes, and Ms. Level, I applaud all of your achievements, and I really love hearing about your passion. My question is just really quick. I happen to know somebody who lives next door with a family. Are there any plans for DJs post-COVID?
Yeah, no, we're not a DJ place.
Good.
We do jukebox and we put the iPod on.
And just from a legal perspective, that's not part of our notice to you, and it's not part of our application to the liquor authority. So no DJs.
We do country and rock music. We have the jukebox. It's not that type of place.
Thank you.
All right, Jeannie.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just a few questions. The menu, what kind of menu are you offering, will you be offering?
Well, I'm doing an homage to my mother. I'm Colombian, so I have decided to do a Colombian tapas menu. So we're going to do arepas and empanadas and plátanos, but it's going to be tapas style. We are a bar, and honestly, we're not really known for food, so I want it to be small bites.
Okay, cool, thanks. Will you bring any of your decor from the old place to the new?
Well, we're trying to sneak it out now because they haven't been letting us in, but
oh,
I know what the honest to God truth is. The stuff I want are the pictures.
Yeah.
That's 28 years worth of memories, and that's what I want.
Well, you have a lot of fans. My family was here last year, and it's like, that's probably one of the last establishments they went into before they left New York City, and we had a great time. Maybe, I don't know what your relationship is with Piper Parablo, but it would be nice if it is a good relationship that she supports you. She's an activist.
She used to come during the daytime. Like she loved to come like Sunday day, come at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I haven't seen her in years.
She's been pretty active with what's going on with social equality. And I don't know, I would think this is something she might want to help out with.
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to her. That's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeannie. Are there any more questions or comments from the committee? All right, I'm seeing none. Are there any questions or comments? Who's that?
Kyle? Can I just say
Who's speaking?
Too? Hi there.
Matt?
Yes, I want to just say something.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up, so I don't know.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. My video wasn't on, but you probably could have recognized me, but I do know a little too much about your place myself from being a 21-year-old in about 1993. And I can recall some fond memories that I had there as a young man in college. A true neighborhood place, you know, a New York City cultural institution. And I can't think of something more appropriate at this time than to support you and your establishment. I remember being surprised to be in your bathroom, but this is part of what made your place so special, that in the stall, there was no toilet. You know, there was like a pipe in the ground. And I was like, wow, you know, this is a real village spot or Lower East Side kind of spot. And it was just really great. I remember, you know, the people asking for water and being yelled at, for example. So
We don't do that anymore.
oh, you don't do that anymore?
90s was a little bit different.
What was her name? Jackie. Jackie used to yell at me from down there. Anyway, so yes, thank you for staying in the neighborhood. I think it's the kind of place that you know, you'll definitely be a part of and responsive to community concerns. So good luck with your new place.
Well, and again, I mean, I plan on getting an apartment probably right around the corner. Not too close so the manager can call me all the time, but right around the corner.
Yeah, all right. Well, anyways, it's nice to see you here.
Matt, it's nice to see you, and thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Max. You too.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So seeing no more questions or comments from the committee or the public, is there any motion? Raise your hand.
Oh.
Go ahead.
That's Kevin. I was just going to do it verbally.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I support the applicant. I'd like to do sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
A motion of no objection?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Motion of no objection.
That's seconded. Matt, you want to second it?
I'll second.
All right, Matt Bondi seconded. I know it's been a while since you've done an application, so it's a little rusty.
Yeah,
all right. So, Cody, can you do the roll call? So there's a motion of no objection to the application.
All right, Kyle Athide.
In favor?
Matt Bondi.
Did you read my lips? I'm in favor.
All right, Dan Devine.
In favor.
Jeannie D'Onofrio.
In favor.
Paige Judge.
In favor.
Youssef, John had to leave. Kathleen.
In favor.
Anton.
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe.
In favor.
Seema Shah.
In favor.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
All right, that's 10 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. The motion.
All right, congratulations, Liliana, and welcome to your new home. We're excited to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very, very much. Kyle, I can't stay. I got to get my little girl to bed, but I'd love to connect with you offline about your new business matter that you have on the agenda tonight, because it's something the Alliance would definitely want to talk to you about. So,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
Committee
great
members,
night.
thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Can we go back to the agenda really quick? We have our final applicant for tonight. So we have the Blackwater Restaurant Corporation, who's applying for an establishment at 975 2nd Avenue. So again, just please introduce yourself, your relationship to the application and to the establishment, and then just walk us through the concept of your establishment, and then you know, some of the logistical specifics, like, you know, hours of operation and the concept of it. Oh.
How you doing? How do you follow someone as famous as Liliane, you know? This is going to be very boring. Hi, my name is Jason Sheridan. I think I've probably meeting some of you through the neighborhood. But again, pleased to virtually meet you. As the only immigrant and small business owner on the agenda tonight, I really want to thank you for all the work you guys are doing to get us back up in business again. We're trying to get on myself, my wife, my kids. We're trying to get on our family. We're trying to get on our feet again after COVID. We did business for 19 years. We just closed the door. So it's been very tough. We live over the building in Jamison's. What we propose to do there is to turn it into a restaurant bar that's going to be family friendly. We want to do a kids menu. We really want, because we're bringing up kids ourselves in the neighborhood, we really want to appeal to a place that's for everybody, that's accessible to what New York should have been before it was taken from us. And we really believe in the space, and we think we can do a great job here. The hours of operations are going to be 10 to 4. It's been a bar for 40 years. We have a lot of faith in the neighborhood. I've lived there as a kid when I was 19. I moved back in my 30s with my family. And we're staying put, and we're going to wait it out, and we're going to do the best we can. The menu is an American menu. We'll do 1 or 2 Irish things. We'll cater for what people want. You know, there's changing taste now. And that's what we propose to do. There'll be no live music. The doors will be closed at 11. Living on the avenue, we know all the problems from the noise before. We lived through the Irish exit. We lived through Turtle Bay. Bringing up kids, I'm not going to go through another SantaCon again on 2nd Avenue. So I'm well aware of the issues that have to be dealt with. I operated the business previously from 2013, 2014. Because of health issues, I had to give it up. But now I'm really looking forward to the challenge, and have a lot of faith in what will be done and what will New York will ultimately become. I think it will become a city for everybody again, like it was when I moved here as a kid in the 90s. If you have any questions, fire on.
Yeah, so I'll just begin with some basic ones as people from the public get their questions and answers in, and the committee as well. Again, obviously you mentioned the issues that are on that particular stretch of block. We have a lot of bars and restaurants there. In terms of noise and crowd control and sanitation, can you just walk us through some of the plans that you have to minimize all of that?
Yes, the building is already soundproofed. I live right upstairs from it. We have a regular garbage company that picks up every night, and that's the way it'll be done. Crowd control, it's not going to be a crazy kids bar. I am 45 years of age. I can't run a place like that.
And in terms of
when I'm in my 20s, I did have kids bars and they were good, but not now.
And in terms of the community relations, what are some of the action steps that you've taken to ensure that your other neighbors feel comfortable? Because obviously a lot of people have PTSD from some of the bad operators on that stretch of block. So what are some of the action steps you've taken to that regard?
Well, I took all the tenants in the building. We talked. It's good. I talked to Angela next door, which is the Buttercup shop, and then Ashleen and her husband and the young baby live next door in Murphy's. We know them all, so we're perfectly accessible. I told them what we're doing. They're happy. The vibe I get off everybody is once a Turtle Bay or a Irish exit doesn't go into the neighborhood, people are really excited about it.
Absolutely. And in terms of your previous operation of it, did you have any community issues, any violations?
No, it was until I got my health issues. It was running perfect. The one problem I did have running it now, and which I'm happy, was when I did have it previously, a lot of customers would come over from First Avenue and would come over to Second Avenue, which was fantastic. But on Friday and Saturday night, they wouldn't come because of all these wild bars that were around the neighborhood. We found out it was a battle, but hopefully it's solved now.
Mm-hmm. And then as I asked the previous applicant as well, we asked that you post a sign outside of the establishment, obviously asking people to be considerate of neighbors, but also with the contact name and direct phone number to whoever the general manager or the manager on premises.
Unfortunately,
so
not a
number,
corporate entity. That will be me. It's the buck stops here.
Okay, so yeah, if you want your number up there, but
1-800 number.
So because we want to make sure again that any community issues are dealt with between the establishment and the and the neighbor. before, escalating it to something that it does not need to escalate to. As I mentioned, quite often these issues are solved if there's just, response to the complaints, acknowledgement, and then obviously addressing that specific issue.
Absolutely.
Jeannie, I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. Just a quick question. I noticed on your questionnaire that you don't have any outdoor space, but given the uncertainties of the pandemic, I know this is not part of the licensing or any outdoor for tonight, but I'm just curious whether or not you would even consider some outdoor seating.
I'm not too sure when we'll open, so we'll approach that when we open, Jeannie. Where it's just one day at a time at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
Hi, thank you for coming before us. Every year we have this scourge called SantaCon. I just want to feel good that you're not going to host that.
I have never done SantaCon in any of my establishments in 19 years. I don't know where this thing came from, but I do not think it's right that a busload of drunken Santas go down an avenue and young children look at them. I just don't believe in it. It belongs on college campuses and not in a city.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Cody, can we actually get from the public, Glenn Kosman, can we get him to speak a little bit?
I've given Glenn permission to speak, so he can unmute himself and ask his questions verbally.
Awesome.
Hi.
Glenn, you're on. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions. Number one is, I believe you said that you're going to be open hours of operation from 10 to 4. Is that
yes.
10 a.m. to 4 a.m. or 10
Yeah,
a.m.?
that's what, that's what we're hoping for. If things get back on its feet again in New York,
Okay.
Not every night. We're not going to do 4 a.m. every night. We'll, every night it'll be different. Sunday night you wouldn't be opening late, but when we have people there, we would like to have the option, obviously. And hopefully when restaurants get back, there will be, some restaurant workers after work. So,
somebody who lives in the community, we actually have some issues with bars open till 4 a.m. in the morning. I just as a feeling, I think 2 a.m. is probably the latest that I would feel comfortable, but that's just something from the neighborhood. So that's just my
I don't think you speak for all the neighborhood, Glenn. The people I've reached out to, they understand. Sometimes you stay open till 2:30. Sometimes it can be 2:15. We're in uncertain times now. We're trying to pay property tax. We're trying to pay rent. It's we're making a gallant effort here to try and go again. We don't want another empty storefront on 2nd Avenue with the social problems that are going on at the moment. And if you walk up and down the avenue, you'll see where there's a lot of vacant storefronts and a lot of problems.
No, I could definitely feel for your for paying the taxes and everything.
No,
I understand that.
Sure do.
Let's see.
Thanks,
will there be a DJ
no
DJs? Okay, great. And the question, would you use any outside promoters?
No, never have, never will.
Great.
If we can't run a business ourselves, we won't do it.
Perfect. Okay. That's basically my questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Glenn.
And can you also just state your connection to the community and your role here, please?
Okay.
So we can have it for the minute.
Sure. I am the president of the board of directors of the Leslie House and one of the members of the East Midtown Coalition.
Thank you so much, Glenn, for attending today.
Thank you.
Cody, can we also let Robin Stroll speak, please?
Yes, she can unmute herself.
Can you hear
Perfect. And can you just please, yeah, we can hear you, Robin. Can you just please also, establish your connection to the community and to this particular applicant and why you're here today?
Yeah, hi, Kyle. It's Joni Schachter. I'm here with Robin Stroll, who lives in my building. I'm the president of the board of 251 East 51st Street. Our building is also part of the neighborhood coalition that Glenn belongs to. And we are right on the other side of Buttercup Bakery. And I want to welcome you to the neighborhood, but
I know you well. I know you well. I know Pasco well there. I know everybody in that building. Yeah, I wish there was a supermarket still, but what do you do?
okay, well, we're the ones that had all the complaints with Irish Exit and Turtle Bay Tavern. And
Yes.
frankly, I don't want to go through that again. I get the phone calls from my shareholders. And I know you'd like the option to stay open till 4, but we'd like the option to get us to sleep long before 4.
Yeah, I do. You know what? I lived there in 1998, and I worked in the Irish Exit when it was previously an Irish bar, which it was for 40 years. There was never an issue on that avenue with late noise, never, until that Irish Exit came in.
Correct.
And my wife was one of the people who called and called you and called the local precinct and talked to the precinct about it with noise. So no, we won't have any issues. And my number's there. I'm accessible.
If you stay open till 4, you are going to have issues because I don't want my shareholders calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I'm living over the building with 3 kids, and I know for a fact, it won't be run like any of these places. It's a small space. We're not going to use outside promoters, and we're not going to have windows open and blare and noise like they did. And I know when Jameson's was there since 1987, there was never problems with noise, and it was open to 4 a.m. So this is just a new thing on 2nd Avenue. This wasn't always the way it was.
Well, I would like to request 2 o'clock, and if you're good neighbors, then apply to go to 4 o'clock. You have no control of the people once they leave your place, right?
It's grandfathered in since 1987, and nobody has any control of anybody when they leave any restaurant, any store, any deli. So that's what we're going to do.
Can I ask you a question? What other establishments do you own?
I used to have Jamison's, and I had a Park Coffee in Astoria. I had Buskers on 92 West Houston. My wife previously owned Gatsby's Bar for 19 years. So I have a lot of experience. I've been at this game since I was a 19-year-old kid as a busboy on 3rd Avenue.
So the Jameson that's there now, you mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean, I go to.
Yeah, I had it in 2013, and we never had a problem in Jameson's with noise. And I don't know what happened over the few years there. I've lived there, and I was I'm not happy with how it turned out the avenue, and we definitely want to right or wrong. And
I mean, this is Robin. I'm fine the way that Jameson's and Murphy's have been handled over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I go there all the time. So.
And it's Joni, I am as well.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with those.
It's the same deal.
I love those 2 bars. So
yeah, I think I think they're a New York bar. The PJ Clark's is closed up. The Pig and Whistle's gone on 3rd Avenue. There's not many of places like this anymore left.
We want to keep the Irish pubs. I love the Irish pubs.
Well, they've always kept the neighborhood good.
Yeah,
and that's one thing for sure.
Noise, but Murphy's and Jameson's are really favorites of mine, and I'm very sad about it. So if we can keep it at the same level, I'm fine.
Oh, it'll be the same level. Yeah.
Right.
Better food, hopefully. Better food.
And I will say to the community concerns, obviously you've been working with our committee, for a very long time now. I took over as chair a couple of years back, and one of the things that we have been very intentional about is, and I've seen you all at meetings in person because we've held meetings in person, is to hold the establishments accountable to what they promise to the community and to make sure that they're good operators. And when that was not respected, and when all of you were not respected, we took swift and decisive action. And one of the things that I've been very encouraged by, particularly with this block, is that we're getting a lot of good operators in, and a lot of the operators there are, in some cases, not to no fault of their own, making up for the sins of Turtle Bay and Irish Exit. And what I'd love to see in the neighborhood is to see, we already have the Restaurant Row East Alliance, who has been doing a lot of great work for the community too, and making sure that things are organized and noiseless and, social distancing and all of that. And so we want to, add to good operators that we already have, and to welcome the new ones that are going to be great as well. And so I think part of that is why we're going through all this and why your conversation.
No, I
is
perfectly understand.
valued as well.
I live over Jamison's. I have, so I understand. It's perfect.
And
All right.
It's Joni again. I will say we never, in all the years, I've been in this building since the late 70s, never had any problem with Jameson's.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. But I do have
Perfect. Yep.
one request. Can you
Mhm.
please have your windows and doors closed by 9 o'clock on the weekdays and 10 o'clock on the weekends?
Yeah, we'll adhere to that. That's fine.
Okay, thank you
That's
so
fine.
much.
No, that's fine, Jody. Yeah.
And thank you. We were happy to have another, establishment in the area that we can go to. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So seeing no more questions or comments from the committee or the public, does anyone have a motion of no objection to the application with the stipulation that the windows will be closed at 9 p.m. on the weekdays and 10 p.m. on the weekends?
This is Seema, so moved. Motion of no objection.
All right. Motion of no objection from Seema. Is that seconded by anyone?
I'll second it.
Thanks so
Seconded
much.
by Anton. So can we go through the roll call, Cody, please?
Okay, Kyle Thud,
I'm in favor.
Matt Bondi,
In favor.
Dan Devine,
Favor.
Jeannie D'Onofrio,
In favor.
Paige Judge,
In favor.
Kathleen Kelly,
In favor.
Anton Malner,
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe,
In favor.
Seema Shah,
In favor.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
Great. That's 10 in favor, no against, no abstentions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the members of the public for coming in and voicing your concerns as well. Always appreciative and value your thoughts and words. So
Thank
as
you.
we
Stay safe.
close off the meeting, yep, thank you, and hope you enjoy your night. Thank you so much. So as we conclude the meeting, I want to go through just a couple of things to share back for the chair's report. I don't have anything major. The only thing is I want to make everyone aware of an issue that we've had with Bar Kogi, which again is on this strip of block closer to 51st. And the issue we're having is with their outdoor dining setup. It has taken over the block. It has actually impeded the entrance to the residential building that's next door to it. So I received a lot of complaints from people in the community, in fact, even some old community board members who sent me videos, pictures. And so we reached out to the owner of Bar Kogi, who 1 week ago said that they were going to abide by the requests that I made to make sure that they were compliant with everything, particularly with the social distancing, which is obviously of most concern is the public health. And so they said that they were going to implement that. So I'll be monitoring that to make sure that there are actual changes with that. So I'll do a quick bike by or walk by and also follow up with the people who informed me of the issue. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that we have reached out to them and actually asked for very actionable and specific things for them to do to alleviate the situation. So moving on or actually something that I just heard about today, we'll be continuing our partnership with Community Board 8. I was speaking with their chair of the Community Board, and we want to continue with the online workshops, webinars that we had conducted earlier in the summer, but instead focusing on retaining businesses and drawing businesses back in. So I'll continue to get onto those planning calls to figure out, what this could look like. Obviously, getting more businesses from our district to discuss their experiences and their needs and issues. But if anyone on the committee would love to join me with that, in that planning, please let me know. It's great, to have, partnership on that as well. So please connect with me offline if you are interested in working on that with me. So So moving on to new and old business, I do want to bring up some new business, which was brought up earlier, which is about this indoor dining situation. So as most of us know, the outdoor dining plan is set to expire at the end of October. Part of that is, of course, the temporariness of it, but also the seasonality of it. And so one of the things that we've heard today that I also wanted to bring up is that we haven't really heard any plans from the state level or the city level as to what's going to occur after that point. One of the reasons that, many businesses, particularly bars and restaurants, have been able to continue is because they've had that option of outdoor dining. But come October 31st, we haven't heard any inkling of what's going to happen after. And of course, as Liliane mentioned earlier, we're not sure what's going to happen after that. And that would, obviously result in many closures of establishments that we've been familiar with and hold dear to our hearts. So I do want to discuss, and perhaps this could be a resolution that we decide on now, or maybe a conversation that we put till next month. But remember, it does need to go before full board, which puts us in a time issue. What we want to think about for indoor dining, we can put a resolution together, either with specific ideas that we have, whether it would be reduced occupancy to ensure that social distancing is continued. But as was mentioned earlier, we have met the criteria for other areas, but the mayor has not put out anything about that. Or we could just, put a resolution that there needs to be a plan put together for indoor dining before October 31st, because to me, just even in terms of timelines, this seems very burdensome and unfair to the local businesses themselves, because they have no way of planning for after October 31st. And the close and the smaller that timeline becomes, the more burdensome it becomes and the more likely it is that they will close. So I do want us to be proactive on this and coming together with some ideas, or even just coming together to, light a fire under the city to make sure that they are thinking about this proactively and are putting something together that is actionable and also at the same time minding public health. I can go on about this, but I do want to open it up for any, initial comments about that, about what we should be doing and what you think we can do, if we want to put something together now or if we want to have the conversation for a later point. Does anyone have any thoughts? And if you're an attendee as well, please feel free to contribute as well through the Q&A function. Let's see. Let's start with Kathleen.
I guess I just have a different perspective on it, that our focus tonight is on businesses. And, I think we need to look at, what's the truth that the state version versus the city's version on what they're looking at, the timeline month by month. And also perspective is you still can't visit your relative. I still can't visit my mother in the nursing home on York Avenue and 72nd Street yet, because they haven't had 28 days with all COVID negative between residents and staff. This is within our same city. So I just think working really closely with the Department of Health, the CDC, I just don't know how they're putting their perspective together for what they see is happening. September and October, when they're looking at a comeback for COVID. There's definitely, we know the numbers are so much lower, but they're still there. So I just don't know, where they're getting their rationale and their timeline for putting a plan together like this, aside from political groups fighting with each other. Like, where are we really getting information about this?
Noted. Noted. Dan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, quickly, I second everything that Kathleen said because I think it's spot on. And Kyle, I do think the sooner the better that we can back something like this, especially when we know that places just outside of the city are more or less, open on a limited basis for indoor dining. And I mean, this disease is certainly, or virus has certainly taught us that there are no borders. So I definitely support what you're putting forth.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Because I put a suggestion out there, but I haven't, dictated a specific plan. Because there are two options that we could go by. We could put a resolution that asks, either city council or the mayor himself to put together a plan before October 31st for indoor dining. It's really been vacillating on that for the past couple of weeks when he's been asked that question. So we could do something like that, or we could actually put together, and this, can incorporate what Kathleen was just talking about. If we want to put together our own sort of, framework of what this could look like, and put that forth. Obviously, once it goes forth, there's going to be a lot of changes just in terms of public health guidelines, data, all of that. So of course it'll be changed to a little bit. But you know what I always say, like, let's be proactive and demand what we want, and then, and put that forward so that electeds have to be responsive to us instead of the other way around. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts in response to that.
They want you to teach remotely, but from school.
Who's speaking? Sorry. Hello? Did we just lose somebody?
No, sorry, that was, I think, background noise. There's a community member.
Okay. Are there any thoughts on that? I put out some suggestions.
This is Seema, if you don't mind if I share some thoughts.
Go ahead. Yeah.
One thing is, I know Molly was sharing about how all the community board leads are actually like convening, I think, monthly to talk about like issues across shared issues. And I know that initially it was kind of initiated through like talking about race and economic justice issues that are shared across all the Manhattan community board districts. But, one of the things that I know Molly mentioned in the last exec was that, they're going to be trying to convene subcommittees. And again, they might all be focused on race and economic justice stuff, but I think that we could kind of if we could tie this in with like either what all the other Manhattan community board districts are thinking or doing, or even potentially just with CB8, since I know we have a better relationship with them, like, I think that would be more powerful and have greater impact if we worked with other board members, as opposed to just saying like, this is what we think is good for, whatever, our 50 blocks. So yeah, that's kind of my initial reaction, just because I don't feel knowledgeable and competent enough to know all of the moving parts that are associated with making this decision.
Mm-hmm. Fair point. Yeah. I think, often those things we can start off, because those conversations are always better if we've thought through it as a committee first. And so that's one of the reasons I like getting things down into resolution form, because it gives us a focused, concise, depiction of what we are thinking that we could then, work on with the full board, and then work with, across community board as well. Because I do agree, like, this is something that is very big. It's something that needs to be advocated for, like, just, more than just our committee, more than just our community board, but it does start here. So I do want to figure out like how exactly we want to think about this, and because this does, start with us here. Jeannie and then Paige.
Just a couple of additional thoughts about this. We're going into the fall, and I think we all want these restaurants to have customers indoors. I mean, we're going to get into rainy season, hurricanes, all of that. My only concern is we are going into the fall. There are students coming into the city now. There are people coming in. And I think my guess is that the governor, it's not the mayor, but the governor is looking at this and saying, New York City is highly congested. We have all of these people coming in. They're coming in from states that are actually in quarantine states. So Missouri, Georgia, whatever. And if they're coming in and they're going to start using the restaurants, where will that put us if there's an infection rate increase? Back to square one. So maybe they are waiting until September comes around, maybe the second, third week in September to see where everything falls. I'm definitely supporting all of this, but I am concerned of the spread of the virus. The numbers have been so low, 0.78 today, 19 days in a row, below 1%. And so, you know, New York City's congested. It's not like the rest of the state. So I just got to keep that in mind.
No, that's a great point. So that's one of the reasons I put for like the other option of us saying that there needs to be a plan, because I think even like right now, even in this discussion, we're speculating what they're thinking about in terms of a plan, and to even just have transparency of where they are in a process or what they're calculating or what's even being included in a calculation would be valuable information for not only us but especially for the businesses to kind of think about how they're planning ahead from their business, because I agree, public health is number one, but at the same time, then, the follow-up conversation, after October 31st is like, oh, all the restaurants are closed. What can we do now? And at that point, it's too late. So, yes, I don't know if, Jeannie, what do you think about that? If there's something more of like, hey, like we, are asking for, transparency and your thoughts for, what happens after October 31st or something to that nature.
I agree 100%.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts? Any questions or comments on that?
Hey.
From the committee or from attendees?
Paige has a question or a comment.
Paige? Yep.
I did have my
Sorry, your
hand
hand
up
went.
for chat.
I know, I thought I saw your hand go down. Yep, go ahead, Paige.
I agree with what you say, but I really feel that we have to know what the city is thinking before we really make a resolution, because we might be just wasting our time. Yes, they should open as soon as possible, except for me, I would be one of the persons that couldn't go because of my limitations. And my limitations is I'm quarantined. And the thing is that I really would like to know what the stipulations that the city and the state would agree with to open a restaurant.
Right, so that's the source of this whole issue, right? Is that we don't know
I
what
said I agree with everything you said, but I really don't think we should make any kind of just outright thing and say a resolution before we know something more. That's my point.
Right, but we could have a framework, right? I mean, that's true of any resolution we ever put forth in any committee, is that, oh, the city might always know more. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't need to do something right now, but there is a time crunch because we are the last committee that meets before full boards. So that does mean if we put it on till next month, that we would meet at the end of September, and then that would any potential resolution would be done in the middle of October. So we can, definitely take time on this. I'm not saying that we have to do something right now, but I do want us to start thinking about that because it's getting a little bit too late. And, with a lot of these issues and, part of why I think our committee in particular is very successful is because we're very proactive and we put out there for elected officials to see, like, these are things that you should be taking into consideration. We're not writing the bills. We're not doing, the actual work of it all, but it is expressing what our needs are as community members, as residents, and as concerned citizens, and that the things that we bring up should be taken into their equation and into their processes. Dan, and then Kathleen.
Yeah, Kyle. I spoke about agreeing with everything that's being said at the outset. So what about if this is what I propose? I think that we should have something that says that we recommend that we urge the city by September 31st to have an indoor dining plan based on specifically stated health metrics. And I think that that's kind of, and we could work around the wording, but I think that's a good way to begin.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Kathleen?
I support the description that Dan just
Mhm.
described. And then also I just wanted to, it's putting you on the spot, but do you know any other community boards that have already like put a template together for a resolution?
So I don't know that anyone is really thinking about it, but that's true of a lot of things that we've done. I think we're still the first and only community board, Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, that was, ahead of commercial rent control like over 2 years ago. And now they're still talking about it, but a lot of the, suggestions that we put into that are being discussed now. So for example, we heard Senator Hoylman about talking about what small business is, which is something that we brought up, over 2 years ago. There's no city definition for that, or focusing on MWBEs, which are, minority and women-owned businesses. So yeah, I don't know anyone else, but I think that's part of, where we can take leadership as CB6, particularly because we are congested with a lot of restaurants and bars, and it's really crucial to our district, where we can then take the lead and, start partnering up and say, hey, this is what we have from our committee, from what our full board passed, like, let's work on something together, because we can always do further resolutions ahead of time, that improve on what we put now. It's not, the be all and end all, just because we put something out, we can always improve on it. So I'd love for us to take, because I don't like us, being responsive to things, because that's when you really lose any input, because then you're being responsive to a bill that's already out there, and there's no incentive to be responsive. So if we want to put and what you were saying, Kathleen, is exactly right. Obviously we don't have jurisdiction over, senior homes, but those statistics and that logic should be taken into consideration too, because the other fear is that it goes on the other end, where it's like, okay, let's completely open indoor dining, and no one has taken into consideration public health risks, because the concern is so economic. So we want to make sure that people are taking into, we're creating some sort of parameter or guideline for the city to follow as they're thinking about this. And for us to have, same what we did with open streets, we can serve as the model for, other locations. So I don't like waiting around for other people to, then say what might or might not be happening, but really for us to define what we want as a community, after thinking about it thoughtfully. Susan?
I just wanted to make a small correction to the proposed resolution. Let's not be asking anybody to do anything by September 31st, since September only has 30 days.
See, that's how we'll see if they're paying attention.
You are so smart. Thank you.
But yes, I do agree. I like the suggestion that Dan made. I like, asking first for them to come up with a plan by a certain time, because businesses really need it. They need to know what the plan is. Otherwise, they can't think ahead. Kathleen, I don't know if your hand is still up from last time, or if you have a response to that.
I don't think it's rushing to say, well, you're saying not to say by September 30th, but I think you need to do that, because we need to know, how they're measuring.
Oh, I think Susan was making a joke, because Dan said September 31st. So there's no 31 days. But yeah, I agree. I think giving a defined time to say, hey, put it together. We, are requesting this because this is important. We can do that. And then if we don't hear anything by then we can kind of put something more substantial, and obviously we'll have more information by then. But also I would just suggest, all of us doing a little bit of homework on that too, because it is very important. So is there a motion of no objection to Dan's proposal, putting together a resolution asking the city to come up with a plan by September 30th? Dan, you can do it for your own motion if you want.
Sure, yeah, it was by September 30th with specifically outlined health metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
All right, seconded by Susan. Cody, can we do the roll call?
Sure. Kyle Athide.
I'm in favor.
Matt Bondi. Matt's no longer here. Dan Devine.
In favor.
Jeannie D'Onofrio,
In favor.
Paige Judge,
Favor.
Kathleen Kelly,
In favor.
Anton Mulliner,
In favor.
Kevin O'Keefe,
In favor.
Seema Shah,
In favor.
Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
It's 9 in favor, no one against, no abstentions.
All right, thank you. Is there any other new or old business that anyone from the committee would like to bring up, or from the public, things that we should be thinking about as a committee? All right, I'm seeing none.
Hey,
I see
Jeannie has her hand
up.
raised.
Yep, Jeannie.
Sorry, just a question. What happened with the that open street idea on 2nd Avenue and I think 51st Street?
Mm-hmm.
What happened with?
So what do you mean?
Did they go ahead with that? Did they close the block, and did they set up the restaurants in the street as proposed in their blueprints?
So originally, so the original proposal was, because again, we had done this so early and proactively, that we had, urged the city, if they wanted to, roll this out slowly, to use that block as a model, as, sort of like a pilot, to see how the rest of the city would work. But the city just did it for everybody. We thought it was kind of, that it would be more, the city would be more open to saying, hey, like, let's try a block first and then see how it rolls out. But they just rolled it out. So 50th and 51st is still doing that. But there have been no mentions of street closures as of now. They're still doing their survey. I don't know if you remember the survey about city streets that are usable and not usable and all of that. Based on that, it doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen on that particular block, because it is a bus route, it is a bike lane route. There's a lot of traffic, obviously, that goes into Queens Midtown Tunnel. But other than that, the purpose of that particular resolution was to get outdoor dining, which then happened. So.
Okay, so I'm assuming therefore that the restaurant owner, I forgot his name that came in, is satisfied.
Brian?
Yeah, satisfied with that, and I'm hoping he's doing well.
Yeah, so I followed up with him, particularly because, we're also talking about the issues with, Bar Kogi being in violation of some things. And so he's been taking, an active lead as, the head of the Restaurant Row East Alliance, and working with all of them to get things done. So he seems to be doing fine. He hasn't mentioned anything new to me, but I did check in with him about it.
I'm saying also, like, you can have normal
yeah.
slides, you can have like the engagement activities.
So, yep. Okay, is there any other new or old business from anyone else on the committee or from the public? Seeing none, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:24 p.m. If there are no objections, we will then adjourn the meeting. All right, seeing no objections, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And also thank you in general for continuing to meet during the summer. We're the only committee that has been doing that, but it's because there's a lot of responsibility on our plates. And so I just want to thank everyone for their engagement and commitment to all of this work. As you saw tonight, we had a lot of great speakers, and it is really appreciated by the business owners, the unions, the groups out there. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment.
Bye.
Thank you so much,
Thanks, Kyle.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well and have a good evening.
Bye-bye.